Hello, everyone. Welcome to episode number 89 of the Avocado Games Cast, the gaming podcast that refuses to drop its awkward legacy capitalization scheme. I am Merve, and today I'm here with podcast editor, the Kappa. How are you doing?
Good. 89, we're getting there.
Yeah,
11 more.
I think we might actually hit 100 this year.
I know, it's crazy.
It's been, we've been doing this since, 2016?
Yeah.
And now it's 2023. It's been, 7 years of this almost now.
7 years of being wrong about lots.
This is actually the first year that I actually went back and documented how well we did on our predictions from last year.
Yeah.
And now the reckoning is here. We're just going to see how bad we are at looking into our crystal balls.
I think I'm pretty optimistic on mine. We'll see.
I know you did better than I did. So, seeing as this is the first episode of recording in 2023, what I thought we'd do today is we'd spend most of the episode, or not most, just a part of the episode, making predictions for the year ahead in the games industry. And we're also going to share the games, hardware, peripherals, I don't know, we're not picky, that we're looking forward to this year. This episode's actually probably going to come out in early February, so a couple of the year's biggest releases, namely Forspoken and Fire Emblem Engage, will already be out by then. In fact, we're recording this on the 22nd of January, and Engage came out 2 days ago. But we do hope to have this out in early February, just before the big deluge of games this spring. So if you want to use this episode as a sort of hype guide, please be our guest. But before we get to any of that, Kappa, I have a question for you.
Oh, no. All right, go ahead.
Have you ever had an epiphany that was just really, really obvious in retrospect?
I have indeed.
You're sitting there thinking, oh, wow, I can do that. Why didn't I think of that 5 years ago? So I go to the library pretty often. I wouldn't say I'm like a regular library goer who goes every week, but I borrow books every now and then, right? It's definitely a resource in my city that I use. I've also known for a while that the library has a big media collection, including a big games collection. And I've seen it. Every time I go to the library, I walk past that shelf with the video games on it. And then last weekend, I finally put two and two together. And I was like, I go to the library, and the library has video games.
Yeah.
I can borrow video games from the library. I've known.
What's funny is my wife works at a library. This would be even easier for me. I could just be come home with this game. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. It's that resource is there. And the lucky thing about my library system is that it's the same loan period as for books. So it's a 3-week loan, which is enough to complete a video game. It's not like we used to rent it from Blockbusters or Rogers Video back in the day, and you'd have just a weekend to do it. Now, I can take 3 weeks with the game that I just borrowed from the library, which is Blacksad Under the Skin. Have you heard of this one?
No.
So this is the game that came out a few years ago.
Is that an anime thing? Blacksad sounds very anime to me.
It is not anime. It is comics. It is based off a French comic by Spanish authors called Blacksad. It's very much not an anime thing, but it is kind of a noir mystery series. That's the comic is based off of. This post-World War II noir kind of setting. It's set in New York. Think of it it's almost like LA Noir, but in New York instead of in LA.
Okay.
The one distinguishing feature of this franchise is that the characters, instead of being humans, are anthropomorphic animals. So everyone's like a cat, a dog, a panda, etc.
There's been a few of these lately. There was the one where the fox detective, kind of in a grimy noir city. I'm trying to think of what it was. There's been a few of these though, right? Anthropomorphic.
One of those.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know the specific game you're referencing, but it's definitely become...
Backbone? or something like that?
Backbone. That's it. That's
Yeah,
exactly
yeah,
it.
yeah.
That's the one I think is set in like I think it was developed in Vancouver. I don't know if it's set in Vancouver, but yeah, that is. It's kind of along those lines.
Okay.
But set in I think the late 40s, early 50s, instead of in the near future. And so the basic mystery at the center of this game is that one of your friends frequents a boxing gym, and the owner of that boxing gym is found dead by apparent suicide. So, and his protege is missing. So you're hired by the now deceased owner's daughter to investigate. And this ends up taking you on a journey that involves the mafia and organized crime, accusations of infidelity, like all your typical noir kind of stuff. I think the plot is actually, I'm about halfway through, is pretty well constructed. It's a mystery that I'm genuinely interested in seeing more of. It's a mystery that I actually want to solve. Like, sometimes you play these mystery games, you read a mystery story, and like, I don't care who did it.
Yeah, that's a good point. There's a lot of mystery games where it's just like, you got to get me interested in the mystery part of it first, right? So.
Exactly. And this is a game where the mystery is actually compelling, it's well constructed. The clues that you have to piece together to advance the story are logically coherent. This is an adventure game, but it doesn't have that crappy adventure game design where you're just like sticking together unrelated inventory items. Sometimes, and this is a gripe I have with it, it's unclear what you have to do to progress, but I would say it really runs on adventure game logic. Really, the big problem with this game is the technical issues. It's published by Micrid, the French video game publisher that doesn't really have a good reputation for technically sound releases. So like this is on PS4. It doesn't look much more high fidelity than a PS3 game, but the performance is like bafflingly poor. Just like frame rate drops to 10 frames per second pretty often. There's like stuttering as you go through the levels. The controls are just awful. Like, we figured out how to move around in third person in 3D like 20 years ago, right?
Right, yeah.
Yeah, I don't know how it's so hard to control this character. It doesn't make any sense. It's like pushing a rope. That's what it feels like, trying to control the titular character, Blacksad. The other main frustration I have is a lot of QTEs and insta-fail dialogue choices. Not really what I'm looking for when I'm playing this kind of game. Otherwise, on the whole, pretty interesting. One other thing I'm going to note about it, and I think it's really weird and clumsy, and I wish it wasn't in the game. So all the characters are, like I said, anthropomorphic animals, right?
Right.
But it also is ostensibly like set in the real world. It just happens to have everyone being anthropomorphic. So it has real world racial identities in it too. So like,
ooh, yeah, that's tough.
yeah, it's like
it's always hard to balance. Like it's not a one for one. What's that movie Bright? Remember that one?
Bright's the one with is it like the
Orcs
zombies?
And,
it's like the Will Smith movie.
Yeah. That's a very fine line to walk, I think, whenever you try to make those types of real world analogies to, you know what I mean?
So this tries to get around that by not having the analogy, right? So it has the real world racial identity. So it's like, there are some dogs, but there are some black dogs, right? So, like, there are, like, actual racial slurs in the game that people get called because it's like, the racial dynamics of 1940s America, where we're still not so much in the North, but at least in the South, we're still in the era of segregation. And people in New York reference segregation of the South. Yeah, it has stuff like that. Like there's a Chinatown in the game, and you're meeting with like members of Chinese organized crime. So it's weird that they have like actual racial discrimination and also stereotypes about the various animals that people are. It's kind of like pick one or the other, right?
Because which bad light are you viewing them in? I
Like
guess.
either have the analogy and own it, or just make everyone human. Like I guess at that point you're just making LA noir, but this is
Yeah,
really awkward. I don't think it works.
yeah. That's like I said, that's a really hard one for me to kind of say like this would be a good idea unless you really nail. I mean, like the social commentary you're going for, but I don't think that's going to be a French indie developer who's, you know what I mean, who kind of figures it out. Like that's a tough one. Yeah, I don't know. I think if you're trying to do that, if you're not going to say anything interesting and the mystery is going to at least be cool, stick with the mystery and just let people's, own actions speak for themselves, I guess. Does that make sense? Like, hey, he's a bad guy because he did this, that kind of stuff. I mean, Pentiment was able to make everybody feel like a bad guy and a good guy at the same time, right? So,
Yeah, I think it's doable to like I think you could eschew this stuff entirely if you want. Like you could
mhm,
still make this noir video game that doesn't reference those social dynamics. I think for the particular story it wants to tell, it does need some version of those social dynamics. It's
mhm,
just like it's not. It's very conspicuously almost like the anthropomorphic qualities of these animals almost obscures the racial identity that it attributes to them. So like you'll be playing the game and then all of a sudden it'll come up like, oh, that gorilla is black, and you're like, how? I didn't guess that he was black. He looks like a gorilla. Like, how am I
yeah,
supposed to attribute a racial identity to that guy? And then, like, you're told that guy is black or that guy is Latino, etc. Like, you you have to be told that, which in and of itself might be a commentary on how racial categorizations are like kind of artificial.
yeah,
Like, I get that, but it doesn't work. It doesn't work when like the whole concept of race is like a visible class of separation. Not that you should treat anybody differently based on his characteristics, but like that whole idea, it just it doesn't hit when the game has to tell you what
yeah.
racial category everyone belongs to.
Yeah, because it's telling you to look at this, and then like even if it surprises you and goes against your thing, it's or against your presuppositions, it's going against that because it gave you that supposition in the first place, right? Like
Like it,
otherwise, you never would even have thought of it.
like I was so surprised. Like I thought this game was going to sidestep racial issues entirely
Hmm.
until I like there's a subplot where you walk into a locker room and you see a racial slur spray painted on one of the lockers, and you're like, oh, I didn't realize race was a thing in this game. I thought it
Yeah.
was all going to be like the dogs are like this and the cats are like this and the reptiles are like this, and it's like, no,
It's
there's real
always
world
tough too,
race
because
here.
like I think about like Zootopia, right?
Yeah.
Like, you know, and it's tough too to like work against racism when at the same time it's like, well, yeah, these things eat us. You know what I mean? Like that's a little bit of a like, like because they try to like have the whole carnivore versus herbivore thing in that, and it works a little bit, but yeah, I don't know. Like, do you just ignore that part of the very real aspect of the animal to make the connection you're trying to make? You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's why I think these analogies tend to kind of fall flat in their face. Like, especially, you're right, with Zootopia, and then if you want to go more adult with that, some like Beastars, it, like, there's always that little bit of awkwardness where you're like, well, this doesn't map one to one.
Right, right. Like I could
Yeah.
understand why a bunny would be afraid of a fox, right? Like
Yeah.
it makes a little more sense. You're not one to oneing it, right?
Yeah,
So
whereas
yeah,
with real world racial categories, that's just like, well, if you believe that, you're an asshole, right?
yeah,
So
yeah.
it's like, that's why it just feels like it doesn't fit. Anyway, other than that, Other than that and the horrendous technical issues, I think there's a decent game here buried. I was gonna say under the skin, but like I
Ugh.
didn't want to go for the pun.
Layer it now.
Now it's there. It's out there. What did you play over the winter
Oh, I
holidays?
mean, a lot of the old staples. Of course, those holiday times are always a good catch up. But I bought my dad an Xbox.
Oh,
And
nice.
so yeah, and he's older, kind of got a little bit of arthritis and stuff. So he was basically looking for 4 or 5 games he could really just kind of get into, and no, weren't too complicated for him. Stuff he thinks he could figure it out. So played a bunch of Peggle, obviously with him. That's always like my classic, like get you into the game. He's always been a big baseball fan, so we kind of did MLB The Show, just cranked everything down as far as the difficulties and stuff. You know what I mean?
Oh,
And
nice.
he just likes to kind of go into like the practice mode, batting mode, or whatever, and just crank home runners. So we did a bunch of that, just kind of like playing games with my dad. I've been going down there a couple of days, past couple of weeks, just hang out with him. For my own, I've been putting a lot of time in Lord of the Rings Online still. I kind of thought this would be like I'll get my MMO fix and be done, but it's really kind of sinking its hooks in. Um,
Oh man, that always
yeah,
happens. It's
but
dangerous.
a lot of this stuff, a lot of the reasons I quit the game have really been dealt with. It's a very in its spot, frozen in time MMO in some ways, but also it's got just enough quality of life stuff, and a really good free to play model. Honestly, I mean, like if I was paying for this, I'd probably be more annoyed with some of this stuff. But when I'm doing all this under a free to play model, I'm actually really enjoying it. So yeah, I mean, I've been appreciating what they fix in the game, because MMOs are not easy to fix. I know Final Fantasy 14 managed to pull it, but that's basically an entirely different game, you know. Um, but it's rare that like you get a studio who sees, hey, these are the mistakes we're making, or this is where kind of like things are going. And they've had a complex development. When I quit Lord of the Rings Online, I think they were owned by Turbine, and Turbine sold them off to Standing Stone Games. I've never even heard of them before, you know. But seeing like they've kind of kept up with the development and everything is really shocking, and in a good way, because a lot of it would just be, let's just pump the money, until everybody quits, and who cares? It's expensive to run servers. It's not expensive to nickel and dime 500 diehards, you know. Um, so yeah, pleasantly surprised with it sticking around. Played a lot of Destiny with my buddies. And then I picked up a game. I don't even know why I did it. Um, Battlefield 2042. Just one of those like, hey, let's see where this is at. Heard good
Was
things,
that
bad
the
things.
one that was a train wreck when it came
Yeah,
out?
absolutely a train wreck. Yeah. So, but I've heard, hey, they've had a couple patches. There's a couple things that are going on. It's more or less fixed. I mean, I don't know. Uh, One, I played a lot of bot matches to try to like kind of get into it, right? Bot matches feel pretty fun. I'm not gonna lie, but obviously you're just comp stomping. Don't get me wrong. But I didn't want to just jump in with no weapons unlocked or anything else like that. So I spent a little time in there, and it felt good enough. The shooting feels really good. Um, the vehicles feel like oddly flimsy. Like I rarely do I feel like in a Battlefield game that I'm more vulnerable in a vehicle than I am on foot, but nope, I definitely felt that with this game. Like every vehicle felt like a death trap,
It
which is
feels like it might be overcompensating for the balance issues they had in the older Battlefield games,
yeah,
where once you got in a vehicle, you're basically
yeah,
invincible.
you're unkillable, right? Exactly. So this one, I feel like they've gotten away from that. The biggest mistake is just kind of locking people down to these hero classes. It's such an odd fit for this game to have hero classes. Because there's a lot of times where it was like, man, I just would like to switch, like this one piece of my kit or this or that. But like, I'm almost like, well, I just basically need to change my whole person, because they've already got this built into their kit, and then it frees up a slot. Like, for example, there's one character who comes with a guided anti-tank missile, right? Now,
Right.
that's a really cool ability that constantly reloads, and you get basically unlimited shots that you just need to wait time wise, right? That's a really strong character. So if you're having, to deal with a bunch of tanks on a map, I don't know why you wouldn't play with that character and instead would pick a not as anti-vehicle character, but give yourself the anti-vehicle weapon, right? Like the bazooka or whatever, So it just seems so shoehorned class to ability. And then, like, hey, I'm going to be a sniper. Well, or I pick up a cool gun and I'm going to try to use this. Well, I'm not a guy who can really use the sniper rifle to the best ability. So, it's just kind of, it's really weird the way it sets about kind of delineating what you can do and what you can do it with. I don't think it's a good fit for the series. I'm betting it doesn't make a comeback in whatever comes next. I think it's been pretty poorly received, but um, comp stompings are fun. It's still fun to play against the bots. I jump into a couple quick matches. They've got a lot of those. It used to be Metro in Battlefield for where it was just like an infantry grinder mode. No vehicles,
Okay.
no nothing, and they've got a couple maps like that, and I think that was smart. The map development on Battlefield is always really good. I mean, I know a lot of people don't talk about that, but I really feel like the way they've done it now with this breakthrough thing, right, where you kind of have to push the enemy back into increasingly harder or easier defense points, right? Um, Really well done. The maps feel very good to me. They don't do as much with the Levolution stuff as they had in the past, but I really enjoyed the maps way more than I've heard anybody else talk about it. But so a little bit of casual stuff with my dad, some Lord of the Rings online, and a bunch of Battlefield. It's been kind of my holidays.
That's nice. I'm actually glad to hear that they've cleaned up Battlefield 2042 a bit because when it came out, a lot of things that you are talking about now were like broken in the game.
Yeah,
People really did not like the levels when they first rolled out. I think they must have touched them up a bit.
yeah, they did, and I think what they did is they kind of flipped. I mean, it's so easy to flip some of the stuff like this thing. If you move this thing 10 feet to here or give this thing a little bit more cover, it feels more intuitive to take it. On the mode, I feel like it was very slanted towards the defenders, which would be frustrating when you'd be playing and not seeing the whole map. But just by doing certain things, and even adding some of those people I was complaining about, those operatives or whatever they call them, having some more with some different abilities that are way more defensive in nature, I think was really smart. Um, because now the offensive guys, when they capture something, they have a little bit of ability to hold it. They're not so locked into the defenders, and it's getting there. I don't know if it's quite there yet. I don't know if it's going to see some kind of resurgence. I feel like it's almost too late. But since it's on Game Pass, might as well, right? So, um, but yeah,
Yeah, if you've already paid for it,
yeah,
might as well give it a go.
yeah. So that's been kind of my holidays. A lot of TV and movies too, but gaming wise, kind of some of the old standards.
Yeah, we will talk about TV and movies in a second. But one other game that I wanted to mention that I've also been playing is Sports Story,
Hmm.
which I guess most of our listeners will have heard by now is a disappointment. And it is a disappointment, don't get me wrong. This is not a very good game. But I don't think it's as bad as I think it's sitting at a sub 60 on Metacritic right now, something like a 58. Like, let's just look this up right now because it did not review well. Sports Story is currently sitting at a 57 on Metacritic.
Wow, that is horrendous bomb level.
Yeah, that is like Sonic game level.
Hmm.
I don't think it's 57 bad, but it's not great. So, and let me put it this way: it's disappointing and not great, but not so bad that I've shelved it or really, really wanted to put it down. So, this is the sequel to Golf Story.
Right.
Golf Story was a fantastic game. Also had a lot of technical issues like Sports Story, but the gameplay loop in that game was fun. It was really funny, and the course design, like you were constantly playing golf and doing fun things with golf. In this game, it's not just golf; it's all of the sports, every single sport,
Yeah,
any
I
sport.
can see why they get overwhelming too.
And it does get overwhelming, but not just overwhelming. Like the golf mechanics, like the 3-click system and dealing with the terrain and the wind and the different clubs was so well thought out in the first game, and they've transferred all that over here. So every time you're playing golf, it's great. But every single other sport is half-assed.
Hmm.
Like cricket sucks, fishing is terrible.
Yeah,
The little bit of soccer I've played is not good. Cycling is really beholden to that, like, that old school, like, you remember like old school like SNES controllers had two buttons, like there's A and a B.
That kind of thing. Yeah.
Yeah, so
That's
like,
awful.
but like you only had one thumb to control that with.
Yeah.
So it's doing a lot of those things where it's like, move your thumb to move between A and B, and it's like, we have shoulder buttons now.
Yeah.
Why are you doing this? This is stupid.
You know what? That was such a popular thing in like old, like you're saying, like Nintendo era sports games, and it doesn't feel intuitive. It doesn't feel natural. It never felt like this is how I ride a bike. You know what I mean? Like, it just felt like mash things. The faster you mash, the faster you go. I never liked that setup. It was something I was glad that had died, and I can't believe anybody might have been feeling nostalgic for that. You know?
Yeah, like, I know that Nintendo games tend to have this kind of reverence and nostalgia. Like if you play, say, Super Mario Maker, it transfers that exact control scheme over, right? Where you have to sometimes like hold both the A and the B, and you're kind of like awkwardly moving your thumb around,
Right.
to like press two buttons at once, or like press one but not the other. So I get what they're referencing. It's a nostalgia thing. It's objectively worse than like having one of those functionalities on a shoulder button and one of those functionalities on a face button.
Yeah.
So I don't know why they do it here. Anyway, also
I see what you mean. It's really tough for me to say, is this nostalgia or is this bad game design, right? And I just have to say, like, me personally, I was never nostalgic for a lot of those old school Nintendo controller designs. It felt like they did it because they had to, you know?
Right, and like, I respect what it was for the time. I'm not going to say, wow, they were really stupid back when they made the NES.
But they think of more buttons.
Exactly. But now we have like a standard-ish controller design. It works decently well. People are familiar with it, and we have shoulder buttons, which are great.
Let me ask you this: do you think there's any mandate or like hint or anything with Switch where they're saying, "Hey, make games that can use the little half a controller that you can technically use that I don't think anybody uses"?
I don't think this would. I think this game is really meant to be played with two Joy Cons.
Okay.
Because otherwise, you wouldn't like when you're playing the golf parts of the game. Aiming and shaping the shot are on separate thumbsticks. So I don't know how you do that on a single Joy-Con.
Okay. I'm just curious because I mean I haven't seen many games that take advantage of that, or but I wonder if someone somewhere was like, hey, we can make this work, this can be the game that does it.
It's mostly first party stuff, and it's decently implemented on first party stuff. Like I've tried it with Super Mario Odyssey for a little bit, and it works decently well. It's not great, but it gets the job done. Also, like other problems with this game, the pacing is really glacial, and the level design is like every map is a maze, and it doesn't need to be.
Ooh, yeah.
I will say too, for the positive, the game's like moment to moment dialogue is still like that dry humor they had in Golf Story. That's really great.
I was gonna say it seemed like the biggest thing you liked about Golf Story was kind of the charming world and a kind of sense of humor. So I mean, any of that still there?
Yeah. So all of that is still there, except for now there's no coherent narrative arc. It's just random stuff happens. And it's funny, but it's random.
Yeah.
Like there's no broader story that makes sense. Like I wrote down the agenda. There's a lot of good stuff here. It's just strung together really poorly.
Yeah.
And I wish, I don't think more time in the oven would have fixed this game.
Kind of direction thing.
Like, the direction is fundamentally wrong. I think they should have cut it down to, maybe 3 sports. So the only fun sports in this are golf and tennis. So maybe golf, develop tennis a little bit further, because I think the bones of a good tennis sim are there. It's just not all the way there. And maybe one more sport, like maybe like fixed fishing or fixed cycling.
Yeah, fishing seems like it'd be so easy to do. Like it's usually, even
I
like
think
complicated fishing games are usually 2, 3 button timing based. There's usually
like the
something.
bones are there. The game just doesn't explain how the fishing works. Like it literally just does not explain the mechanics to you, which is ridiculous.
So you're saying though that the 50s that it's getting are a little too extreme, but it's also got a few problems.
Well, okay, here's what I'd say. I don't begrudge any reviewer their individual like 3 or 4 out of 10. But a game of this caliber usually doesn't score that low across the board.
Right, right.
Like you'd get a couple of 3s and 4s, and then you'd have a lot more. You'd have a lot more 7 out of 10s.
Maybe like golf. Golf was so successful that it kind of set them up to be reviewed a little harder than your average kind of fun, goofy sports game would be.
Because Golf Story
was better. Yeah,
Golf Story was so good. Like it was honestly one of the best games in the Switch's launch year, and to follow it up with this mess, that those 3s and 4s aren't like 3s and 4s of like anger. They're 3s and 4s of disappointment.
Yeah, I got you. I mean, but so much of Switch's catalog seems to be up and down like that too. You know what I mean? Like all the first party stuff excluded, right? Which always does outstanding, but it does seem like they've been having trouble getting consistent support from some of those third parties, right?
Yeah, like even last year Sparks of Hope reviewed well, but it didn't sell well. And beyond that third party support, it's usually been, let's be frank, lazy ports.
Yeah.
Like even games that are not super high fidelity just run like crap, which is weird because let's say 25% of ports run really well. And those games are not any more complicated than the games that run poorly.
Right.
So
right.
I think
it's not a
just
complication thing or like yeah.
Like I know we keep hearing, the Switch is long in the tooth. A lot of people in Games Media are like, oh, I really, really want to Switch too. Yeah. And to some extent, I think that's kind of concern trolling because, like, if all you want to do is play first party and indie stuff, the console should be able to handle that.
Yeah.
And it's demonstrably been able to handle that for a lot of indies. So the indies that don't get ported well, like at a certain point, that's not on the hardware. That's on the devs not being able to optimize properly.
You do see scenarios where it's like, PlayStation or Microsoft or whatever, they'll put somebody in a development studio and say, this is how you make this work on an Xbox, right? Yeah. And I don't know how much of that is or isn't happening with Nintendo. I don't think anybody knows, right? But I think that was like always kind of that big step forward. I mean, especially even PC gaming, once NVIDIA started putting people into dev teams and saying, yeah, we can make this work. Here's what you would do. You started to seeing games come out way more optimized, than other generations. But I think it was by just having that liaison or that person who could make it work. And I don't know if that's happened with Nintendo. I don't know if they need it to at this point. It kind of seems,
like they're too popular to have it. Yeah, I don't know whether they're doing that or how good their indie liaison outreach stuff is. Like the stories I hear are all across the board, from Nintendo is a fantastic partner to work with to God, I can't even get a hold of my contact. And so I assume the reality is all of those things.
Yeah.
And it's really idiosyncratic. It depends on the studio you are, your contact, and like even what country you're developing in.
Yeah, that's true.
So it's really hard for me to tell. All I know is that I play some games on Switch and they run like a dream, and I play others and I'm just like, do you know how to program?
It's tough though because you have to look at every single game, right? Like if it's anywhere else, like is this the right platform? It almost never is, but I would love to have that option to play a lot more games on Switch because I just don't use it for anything. I'm just being honest, I'll play the big Nintendo games when they come out, but I'm not playing anything else on it for the most part,
Yeah, I'll play. Sometimes I will choose to play an indie on Switch just because I want to play it lying in bed. Yeah. But for the most part, I buy most of my games on PC. Yeah. I don't even buy games on my PS4 anymore. I haven't literally just like not used my PS4 for gaming for 2 years.
Yeah, mine's a Netflix box.
And yeah, mine is a Netflix box, basically. I use it for streaming Netflix and Crunchyroll while I'm on my exercise bike.
Yeah,
That is what I use it for. Sometimes I stream Twitch and YouTube if I'm feeling weird.
Yeah, yeah. That even feels weirder though. It's like, should be using you for more than this, old buddy.
Exactly. So I did want to mention one other thing I've been playing.
Okay.
I just played through the prologue of a game called A Space for the Unbound, which is a 2D pixel art adventure game set in suburban and rural Indonesia in the 1990s. And it's a kind of slice of life game mixed with the supernatural. You're a teenage boy who can use magic powers to dive into people's brains, kind of Psychonauts-ish style almost.
Now you got my attention.
And then, but like instead of those full elaborate levels, it's usually like really brief puzzles inside people's brains. So I really wish I'd had more time to play it by the time of recording because it came out, I think, on Thursday this week, on the 19th of January, and I just haven't had time to sit down and really play it. I've only played the prologue, but it's a game that I've been looking forward to for a really long time. And I've been saying for a while that the two most important frontiers in game development nowadays are going to be Latin America and Southeast Asia. So I'm really excited to play this game as like one of the games coming from that frontier.
Yeah, yeah. And it does seem like we've been getting that kind of like indie push for a while from Latin America. Like I'm thinking about like, was it Papa EO? Is that what it was called?
Papa EO was, yeah, that was
a
several
while
years
back,
ago.
right?
Yeah.
And, yeah. So I mean, like it seemed like that there was a little bit of a trickle out, and then kind of stopped and started again with a couple other games. But
Yeah, like Chris Tales came out a couple
yeah,
years
Chris Tales,
ago.
yeah.
So
Yeah.
I've been like itching to play some of those.
Yeah.
But just haven't had the time. Like Chris Tales was free on Epic at some point last year, so I picked it up and I just never fired it up.
Yeah, it's gorgeous. I mean, it's a good looking game. I played probably about the first hour and a half of it, and just kind of one of those things. Like it's a grindy RPG. I get that feeling, you know. But
Yeah.
it was gorgeous. It was fun to play when I played it. It's just I wasn't ready to make that commitment then. So,
I'll make that commitment one day when I have the time. I keep saying that one day when I have the time. Speaking of something I did actually have the time to do over the holidays, have you watched Arcane?
yes.
Yeah.
I watched it when it came out, and interestingly, I have played a fair amount of League of Legends, just to set the stage. I just don't know a lot about the lore. I don't know why the lore in that game just bounces right off of me. So like I was going into it kind of as someone unfamiliar with the series, even though I've got hundreds of hours in League. Because to me, League was always a Dota ripoff. And I know a lot of people don't like to hear that, but I grew up on Dota 1. So, you know, when in my mind, it's just like, okay, oh, Karthus is Lich King. You know what I mean? Like, or like, I would always just have to like make these one-to-one comparisons. And I never really bothered with trying to learn any of the kind of lore or whatever, because in my mind, I was playing the knockoff, you know? And, you know, slowly the knockoff became the top of the heap, I guess, right? But I don't hear anything about Dota 2 anymore. But anyway, but that's why I never really delved into the lore, because it was just like, okay, all you're really doing is reframing the Warcraft lore. But then at some point, apparently, because the show was really interesting, they got away from that. So yeah, I really enjoyed the show a lot.
Yeah, I have even less familiarity with League than you. Like, I have never played a second of League. All I knew about it is that there are characters called heroes, and the game is set in a world called Runeterra, and that is literally all I knew going in. So I was just watching this as an animated show that people told me was really good. And it was really good. I actually thought it would be even better because it had been talked up so much, and it ended up being, I'd say, very good, but not fantastic. Good enough that I'm really excited for the second season, and I want to see where it goes. But not like, oh, this is the best thing of all time. And what really surprised me, I consider this a positive surprise, that it reminded me a lot of like a lot. It reminded me a lot of prestige drama,
Hmm.
but in a good way. Because prestige drama can sometimes be really tropey in and of itself. Like, it has these morally compromised characters
Yeah,
who are all like who do
everybody's an
stupid,
anti-hero.
selfish things.
Yeah,
Yeah, and they do stupid, selfish things, but the show is not interested in exploring why they do those super selfish things. It's just like this character's an anti-hero
yeah,
who just like does anti-hero things, and let's watch some 43-year-old white guy be an asshole for
yeah.
50 minutes every Sunday. Like that's what these shows are to me. And so it's nice to see a game that can, not a game, a show that can kind of evoke some of that, but that's actually interested in its characters' motivations. And like, let me be frank, is a little bit more diverse
Yeah.
in the cast of characters it's portraying as compared
It's
to
interesting
a lot
too.
of that drama.
I think I think you're getting around to it too. Is like when this came out, it was, is this good for a video game adaptation? Is this good for a westernized anime, or is this just good? Period. And I think the more people watch, it's like, no, this is a good show. You
It
don't need
is.
you don't need the league. You don't need to be animation fans. You can just watch this like a show. And like I watched it with my wife. She loved it. She didn't need all that other background stuff. And I think that's when you kind of know you've got something pretty solid, when it transcends those two levels, where you're not
Yeah.
just watching it because you're a fan of the show, and you're not just watching it because you're a fan of animation. It's like, no, it's just a good show, period.
I kind of wish actually that I'd gone into it just like being a fan of animation and not knowing it had any connection to League,
Hmm.
because what I couldn't stop myself from doing as I was watching the show was trying to pick out which characters were heroes in the actual
Yeah,
game.
yeah. I don't think there's a lot of them, honestly. Like,
It turns out that most of the main characters are heroes in the game.
right, but like, I don't think they had. I don't. I'd have to look, but I don't think they were like the original, 20 years. I think some of them were added along the time the game came out, or the show came out, I should say. But I don't know. I don't remember the three main characters at all. And that might just, they might be newer. They might not have been in the game when I played, or I might just not have played them. When League came out too, there's 50 million heroes. So,
Yeah.
if you didn't
No,
play one, who knows?
I think Jinx, Violet, and Caitlyn have been in the game for a while, but again, I'd have no
I think
familiarity
Jinx
with the
was.
game.
I don't know about Vi. I'd have to look. But yeah. So I mean, like, it's kind of one of those, like, they add a new hero every 2 weeks. So, but I don't know. I don't know if I had the same experience where I wanted to look. I wanted to just watch the show on its own, and see if I recognize anybody. Like, almost like, oh, it's that guy.
Yeah.
But when my fave heroes didn't pop up, I wasn't bothered about it. But I also was kind of like, oh, I wonder what he was up to. Um, but yeah, it's on its own. It's a good show. I think it's got a lot of accolades for it, and I think the other thing it's done is every damn gaming company in the world right now is like, how do we make this ourselves? I mean, like, I hear pretty much every property now is looking for their version of this.
I
So
mean, The Last of Us is doing it in live action
yeah,
right now on HBO to surprising critical acclaim.
I wonder about that one though, because I think we've kicked this around on the avocado, but The Last of Us was already a cinematic as hell game. I think someone said, it might have been you even, it was like when they got the script from the game, it was already basically a screenplay. They're like, yeah, there we go. Um, so I don't know if that's just like the perfect fit for the perfect show. Plus, it's basically a zombie story. So it's got that kind of like level of comfort fit for most of the audience anyway, who
Yeah.
have now grown up on zombie shows. So you don't have to explain. Yeah, this is just zombie shit. Don't worry about it too much. Don't get too wrapped up in the fungus or whatever. But yeah, I don't know. I mean, I haven't watched it, and I think part of it, I've got this weird relationship with Last of Us where I think it was the perfect game. I really do. I think Last of Us One was a perfect game. I had such a good time playing it. I walked away from it, and I was like, I don't feel the same need to play a sequel or to watch a show, or I don't know. I don't know if the show would do anything different for me than what I walked away from the game. If I can binge it, maybe that'll make it a little bit easier.
Yeah.
But I don't know. There was a lot about that game where I was just like, the emotions I felt, the things that happened, the gameplay that connected it all was really just taking you from scene to scene in a movie anyway, right? I just don't know. Like, I'm glad people are enjoying it. I probably will watch it and binge it one day, but it's not as surprising, I guess, to me that it's a big hit, because I was like, yeah, it's a very well written, tight cinematic game. Um, I don't know if they're going to try to wring a second and third series out of it, or season out of it. That'd be a little more interesting, I think. Because then
I
you
think
get
the
more
plan
story.
is to do more seasons,
Yeah.
but I don't know whether they're going to do like more side stuff, whether they're going to adapt the second game. Um, Again, I've never played either Last of Us games, so I wouldn't know like how exactly the show maps to the game, or the game maps to the show. But my understanding is that they want to eventually adapt both
Yeah, I
games.
think what they do is they just get in the show, they get into more detail, from what I can understand. They just get into
Yeah.
more detail about certain events that are kind of one-off mentioned in the game. Oh, he was a smuggler, or you know what I mean, like those types of things, and they break into it a little bit more. But I got nothing against the show. I'm not mad it exists or anything. It's just like, you know,
Yeah,
it.
I don't need to watch this right
Yeah,
now.
exactly. Yeah, I got so
Yeah.
much on my plate. I'll catch up to it.
All right, so that's what we played and watched over the holidays. Now, before we make predictions for 2023, what we're first going to do is look back at the predictions we made in 2022 on our first podcast that we recorded in 2022 and see how well we did. And so I'm just going to go through all the predictions we made. You and I, Kappa, were both on that episode along with podcast
Yeah.
regulars Lovely Bones and Lutaire. So let's first start with my predictions.
All right.
My first prediction was that the Steam Deck wouldn't work as well as advertised.
Yeah.
I was wrong.
I'll give you a half on this one. I think. I don't know. I don't know if I would say wrong. There's been a lot of tinkering with stuff. I think that,
Yeah,
like, a
okay,
little
there's
bit
some
of.
games that aren't up to stuff, but like the promise of being able to play most of your Steam library on the go,
Yeah, yeah.
they fulfilled
I'm
that.
trying to give you a
So
little credit, but yeah. Um,
I think brought in spirit I was wrong on this.
I think.
Even if like on some particulars, like some games like absolutely crapped out on the Steam Deck, sure, but in spirit I think I was wrong on
Elf
this.
Hunter's probably happy with theirs. It's just, we've talked a lot about this with just technology in general. I just don't have that slot in my life for the Steam Deck. I just don't, and that's not a bad thing or a good thing. Other people are more mobile than me, but when I'm gaming, I'm sitting down, I'm comfortable. I got my room, you know what I mean. And I realize that's not everybody's reality, and I'm pretty lucky to have it, right? But I just, I had do you remember when Nvidia came out with the Nvidia Shield? Not the TV box, but the actual handheld.
Yeah,
I've got one of those, and on it I had, oh god, I think it's called Moonlight, which would basically let you remote into your own PC and play your Steam library. And then there was some games that were just straight up available to play through Nvidia, And I was like, oh, this is going to change everything. I can, take my games with me on the go and everything. It just never really ended up working out for me. And this was when I was probably the most mobile in my life, because I think I was still in the army or had just gotten out. But I was doing what I do now, which is driving from house to house, and I've got lots of downtime, and um, it never really found that spot for it, right? Tablets are kind of the same thing for me. I don't have a tablet. I've owned plenty of them. I've just never really found that spot for it. So I'm glad that the
yeah,
Steam
it's
Deck
like
exists, but it's also something that I can kind of comfortably say I don't know that this is a gadget I must own, even with kind of the success they've been having.
yeah, I'm kind of in the same boat. Like, I mean, now my commute is on foot,
Hmm.
but my commute to work used to be by bus, and it
Hmm.
could be an hour and a half each way. And then, like, I was very glad that I had my Switch. I'd play that on the bus, and I could see a Steam Deck slotting into that
Right.
part of my life. But I already have a device that I can use to play games in bed, and that's the Switch. Like, I don't need a second device for that now. So I can't see a Steam Deck slotting into my life at this point.
And I think part
But
of it
if
too,
circumstances change, maybe.
can be the games that you specifically tend to play, right?
Yeah.
Like, I don't know that I would want to sit down and play, a long RPG or an MMO, or a looter shooter on a Steam Deck. I don't know that I would. I think there are a ton of games that are perfect for it, right? I
Yeah.
just don't know that the games I play would have that fit, you know? Um, so
I figure some of them For me, some of them might, but I don't really have space for it in my life right now. I don't have space to be just buying more gadgets.
Mm-hmm.
So, I'm glad for its success. It's just, not for me at the moment.
Yeah, I don't think there's anything wrong with that, you know?
All right, let's move on to my second prediction, which
Okay.
is that Digimon Survive will release in 2022 within a couple of months of Digimon Con, which was held in February, and a new Digimon game will be announced at Digimon Con for a late 2023 release date. Yeah, I was wrong on this one as well. Digimon Con was in February. Digimon Survive was a release date was not announced then. They did announce a release date a few months later for late July. And a new Digimon story game is in development, but it has not yet been officially unveiled. And I'm not even sure it'll come out this year. I think maybe early 2024. But at this stage, unannounced. Well, I mean, we know there's a new game in development. That much has been announced, but we don't know its name. It's not been confirmed what it's about. There's been no footage. It's like how Dragon Age 4 was for years, where we knew it was happening. The studio said it was happening, but they didn't say anything more about it.
Just to give you a little more, this is all on you. That was a very specific prediction. So,
I mean, I think specificity is, I think
it's more
not
fun,
being
right?
specific is, yeah, specificity is fun, and vagueness is cowardice
Yeah.
when it comes to this
I
kind
like
of exercise.
little into that too. So I like how we had the normal wacky. That was a good one last year.
Yeah, we did 2 normal, 1 wacky.
Yeah.
I think someone did 1 normal and 2 wackies.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter. So my wacky prediction was that the new Mario Kart game will be a mashup with F-Zero. I gave myself an unconfirmed on this because I didn't specify a timeline in my prediction.
Yeah.
No new Mario Kart game has been announced yet. We don't have a Mario Kart 9. We don't know when it's coming. We don't even know if it's coming. So I'm going to say neither true nor false.
I think that's fair.
All right, what was your first prediction?
Digital purchases becoming interoperable between stores. This was false, but God, I wish.
I really wanted this to be true.
Yeah, I mean, maybe not, it's not there yet, right? But I mean, I feel like it feels like everybody's trying to take the tiniest bite of the smallest, piece that they possibly can right now, right? Everybody's moved back to Steam for the most part, right? Microsoft's back on Steam, EA's back on Steam, Ubi's back on Steam, everybody's back on Steam, right? So I could really see this being fine. You can buy this, you can play it on Steam, but here's what you get if you buy it from the Uplay store and we give you a Steam code or something like that, right?
Yeah.
That's maybe where this ends up going, right? Hey, buy it on Steam, but activate this on the Uplay store and we'll give you a costume for Altair. You know what I mean? Something like that. But I don't know.
I think it's still all, I shouldn't say it's all gravy for the publisher, but it actually does help them gather data on player usage, which they're not going to get directly from Steam. I mean, they can have you log in to your Ubisoft account to play the game when you play it via Steam, but people are just going to get annoyed if they have to do that. Whereas if you do it when you fire it up from the Uplay client, then they get all those user metrics that are so valuable for figuring out how people play games, and they can spin that into their future development.
Well, this is also why I think it's more and more important for Epic to still exist. I mean, I know people think I'm crazy, but I really do think that competition is absolutely necessary in these types of storefronts. I really do. I don't want it all to just be Steam. Remember, a lot of the improvements Steam has had in the past couple years, they basically were goaded into because other shops allowed it, right?
Yeah, like the return policy, that was huge
Origin.
pressure from Origin.
Yeah, and I mean, people forget about that, but yeah, I mean, until people were like, wait a minute, Origin's got this you love it guarantee. If I don't love it, I just click a button, I get my money back. Little things like that are what pushes Steam. Everybody's so convinced that Steam is the good guy. I'm not as convinced as everyone else.
I think their reputation has suffered in recent years. But I mean, I will say I haven't thought they're the good guys since 2013.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
I've had a decade of crapping on Steam.
But they're the convenient guys right now, and I get it.
Yeah.
People want to have all their stuff in one place. I get it, but
Like, I am one of those people. I'll argue that I do want a lot of my stuff in that space that I can use with that client, and I can interact with that community.
Yeah.
But that's because of how I play games, right? Like, I love sharing my screenshots with my friends. I love like all the collaborative features. I love being able to like stream parts of my gameplay to friends, like Steam Remote Play. Like, these are features that I actually use. But I understand, like, if you're not using those features, Steam is for most people who use Steam just another launcher.
Yeah, storefront. Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, wrong on this one. That was my normal one, but man, okay.
All right, let's go with your wacky prediction,
Yeah,
which
my wacky
weirdly
one is
enough
that
you did pretty
Nvidia
well
is
on.
hoarding RTX 30 series, and the card drought will end abruptly this year once the 40 series is announced. I'm gonna give myself a full true on this. There has been something going on with these cards I cannot figure out still. Like, no one's buying these 4070 Ti's. They're just sitting there, right? 4080s are priced really weirdly where they would normally price the 4080 Ti. There's no 4080 Ti on the horizon that I've seen, at least. 4090s are that higher tier that, the founders editions, that used to be called.
They're really trying to push people towards buying the 4090.
Yes.
And making the 4080 comparatively less attractive. Like, it's like in marketing, it's called the decoy product.
Right.
Where it's a product that you don't necessarily, that you put out into the market that most people aren't going to buy, that exists to make another more expensive product look better.
Really be at the 4070 level if they were just honest with themselves. But they go, look, another extra whatever, and I can get a 4080. Well, I can get a 4080, but another little extra whatever, and I can get a 4090. And then they slowly talk themselves into spending.
I've been on that treadmill.
Yeah.
Like, I went up from I was going to buy a 270, and I was like, you know what? I'll spend a little bit of extra scratch for the 2080. Mm-hmm. Like, I was on that treadmill. I'm familiar with it.
It's just very weird. The availability of the 30 series kind of can't find it anywhere to, okay, the 40 series, basically nobody was buying the 30 series because everybody's just sitting there waiting, saying, fine, if this thing isn't available, I'm not going to go, fight scalpers and fight this. Just tell me when the new line is available. 40 series gets announced, and now these 30s are just sitting there because crypto crashed. Crypto also got away from mining. Now mining is effectively dead, and so
because they went to proof of stake rather than proof of work.
And then it just really ended up being like this giant crash for Nvidia, where I think they ended up like having to sell the 3080, but not enough, not hard enough that people would buy it.
I don't think NVIDIA was ever hoarding cards. I think they were just producing at the level they were going to produce. I mean, keep in mind, there's a worldwide component shortage, a worldwide silicon chip shortage. So I don't think they were necessarily hoarding the cards per se, but I do think they were taking advantage of the crypto boom to, like, keep the prices high.
Yeah.
And higher than they potentially needed to.
And I think where they screwed up is they thought eventually people are just going to give up and just start buying these. And I don't know that it's happening. I think you're seeing a lot of people who are very happy with 20s and 30s, not even looking at 40s. I do every other gen, right? So I went from 1080 to 2080 to 4080, basically. That's just how I do it. I don't, everybody's got their own thing, right? But I didn't even look at the 30 series because I knew I was just going to wait it out. And the prices were too ridiculous. And also, it's a lot of effort to get a 30 series that I was not willing to put in. It was the perfect, convenient, time between everybody wanting to build PCs because of the pandemic, to crypto, to everything else. I was like, I'm sitting this one out.
And I think that was a smart decision.
I think so, too. And I think eventually I'm going to get my wife a 3070 and pop it in hers for hopefully with a couple $100, and I'll be quiet till 6080. And I will say this too: the form factor of these cards got to get a little better. This 4080 is no lie the size of a Series S, and I've heard that the 4090s are even bigger. One of the big reasons I went with 4080 over 4090 wasn't just the performance is pretty close, but it's too big, it's too hot, it's too loud, and it takes too much power. and that
And
starts,
like,
you know,
I'm physically worried about how heavy it
yeah.
is because your motherboard has to support it. You don't want it sagging in your
Yeah,
tower.
I went and bought
That's
this thing. It's like it's almost like an elbow bracket. You know what I mean? And like I screwed it down to the bottom of my case, and it's got like a winching arm to take the weight off. It's all very odd, you know, to have to kind of like pry open your case and get your video card held up, you know, with a secondary thing that you have to go buy now. Um, I don't
like
know.
they should. I don't know if I don't know, EVGA is no longer in that market, but if like Zotac or whatever is building these cards, they should come with these brackets.
Yeah,
Like,
what's
don't
interesting.
sell me something that's gonna break my motherboard, right?
I have a Gigabyte, well, I think technically Aorus motherboard, right? And it's a pretty new one. I think it's within the last year, right? So I don't know how much of the 4080, 4090 specs they knew about, right? But I get the 4080 card, and it comes with a mounting bracket that wants you to screw holes into, like, through your motherboard into your chassis, right? So that it'll hold up the um, the GPU from the back of your computer, kind of like winch the weight into the back.
Like, do you literally have to drill a hole?
Oh, no. Like it would, so it would be like a peg through,
Oh, okay, okay.
like through the motherboard and into the case, like where you normally would screw in, um, like your standoffs, right? And I was like, you know what, I would rather have my video card dip than my standoffs break. Because I was trying to, you know, do the math in my own head, like what would be worse, you know? And I was like, well, if the standoff breaks, wouldn't it just basically fry everything anyway? So I was trying to, I was like, you know what, I don't like the idea of doing this. I'm just gonna go buy this little $10 thing from Amazon. But um, I don't know. This got to end some point. You can't just keep making these things so big. But power consumption is I mean, I don't know what electric looked like in your area or anything, but I mean, my electric bills during the summer were hitting $200. That's insane for us. You know, and we gave the power companies kind of this excuse with, you know, oh well, I guess war with Russia makes our electricity go up. So yeah, sure, go ahead, charge me whatever. But
I
um,
live in Ontario, the land of cheap hydro.
there you go.
So
Well, I mean, ours is
my
cheap
perspective is a
too,
little
man.
different.
You would think that, you know, someone would say, "Hey, wait a minute, we don't get any power from Russia," so, but nope, they just gouge anyway. But yeah, I just, it was something that was very top of mind when I was buying around. I started looking at the wattage. I was like, well, if I get the 90, I got to get a new PSU. It's got just an idle power draw that's very high. I mean, a lot of stuff just kind of pushed me away from it. But yeah, I don't know. Maybe there wasn't an exactly a conspiracy, but they definitely were playing some games there, I think. So, and
All right.
my
Well, let's
third
move on to
one,
your third prediction, which
yeah.
I think you got. I'll say I'll give you a full true on this
All
one.
right, all right. This was games that will dominate the conversation this year are indie games that aren't currently on many people's radars. I think this is pretty fair. I think Elden Ring did suck a lot of the air out of the room initially, but I think that was expected, and everybody kind of knew what they were getting with Elden Ring. Maybe a better story from what I've heard than what maybe they typically would have gotten from a Souls game. But, you know, it was kind of like, yes, this is still great, and the great still keeps being great. But it didn't seem like it took over the conversation, right? God of War, kind of a similar scenario where it was good, but I feel like everybody played it and was done with it. I didn't see a lot of discussion about God of War other than, you know, kind of similar to Elden Ring. Yep, this is still good, it's still fun, but I don't think God of War Ragnarok was pushing, you know, gaming boundaries or anything like that. I heard a lot of people say it was a slight step back than the first one, even. Um,
Yeah, I've heard both that it's a step back and that it's a step forward. I think people are roughly evenly split on
yeah.
that.
But I think this year really was, I mean, a lot of indies that just came out of nowhere that everybody really got into, at least, you know, if you're talking discourse wise or whatever you want to talk about, right? But I mean, it seemed like Stray was, for whatever reason, I mean, it was captivating a lot of people. Pentiment definitely. Neon White has like a speedrunning community, I think. You know, like there's a
Yeah.
lot of interesting games that came out of that left field that we were not talking about. And I think part of it was kind of how 2021 and 2022 were so weird for development. I think a lot of these companies didn't really know what they had, so they didn't really know how much to talk about it. Um, but yeah, a lot of sleeper indie games that really just kind of came out last minute and really took over a little bit. I think we're still kind of seeing through that.
Yeah.
A lot of the cool talk is still around little, little studios and little indie games in a way.
Like, it was interesting for me to see games like Norco,
Mm.
Signalis, and Citizen Sleeper that just come out of nowhere to end up in the Game of the Year conversation
Yeah,
at the end of
even
the
if you
year.
look at like large publication game of the year stuff, it's like Elden Ring, maybe God of War, like two or three, and then it's a lot of indie stuff for the filling out the rest of the 10. And it's
Yeah, a
never
lot of Norco, a lot of Neon White, a lot of Signalis, a lot of Immortality on
you
those
don't see
lists.
that usually in big publication end of the
Yeah,
year, type lists. You usually see, it's almost always the opposite. Here's your one or two token indies, and then like here's all the actual AAA stuff we love. But there wasn't AAA was real dry this year. It really was.
I would say in a typical year, you'd get probably like Cult of the Lamb would make it,
Mhm.
and like maybe Immortality, and that would be the token indies on like GameSpot or IGN's
Yeah, like
list.
there's no way Pentiment would. You know what I mean? Like that,
Yeah,
that just does not feel like the kind of game that would make their game of the year list. Even though it's fantastic, it would get bumped out by, Call of Duty 9 million. Not because like I'm saying they're dumb, but I'm just saying like that's the kind of game that takes all the air out of the room. And Call of Duty and Battlefield and all these other games kind of had down years, honestly. I mean, even Halo still never had their up year yet. So
yeah.
it's really weird to see those indies be where the game of the year conversation. I mean, I was really pleasantly surprised at our own list, honestly. Like, shoot. I mean, I know Total War isn't exactly an indie, but it's definitely not AAA. So
Yeah, for
a
sure.
lot of interesting advances this year when it comes to the games that came out. So I'll give myself
I
like
think
a 1.5 out of 3.
I think you're mostly true on this.
Yeah.
I will say it was really fun for like every outlet's Game of the Year conversation to just look like rock paper shotguns for
Yeah.
a change,
Yeah.
which is interesting. And I hope that this kind of trend continues where media outlets do continue to cover like the big AAA releases, but also when it comes to the end of the year, they take a look back at some of the indies that like maybe one or two people on staff played, and they're like, "Yo, you go play this.
Yeah.
It was fun. It was great."
It reminds me a little bit of kind of where movies were, like maybe like the like mid early 90s, where everything coming out that was, like a Lionsgate or a Kevin Smith or like those were all the real movies. That's where things were happening and nobody was really going to the cinemas and stuff like that. You'd get your one or two in, but it really felt like there was something interesting happening, away from the big spotlight. And I don't know. This is a really cool year, and I'm not super, super, super into like, if you show me a pixel platformer, you better have a damn good hook for me to play it. But I thought it was a good year. I mean,
Yeah,
for across the board for indie games.
yeah, absolutely. All right, let's move on to Lovely Bones predictions. Her first prediction was that Obsidian will put out a lot of information on all their upcoming games.
Mm.
I'm going to give this one, maybe I'm being unfair. I think I'm going to give this one a mostly false because Obsidian did release Pentiment, but they hadn't announced it at the time
Yeah, it was
we
kind of
made these predictions.
yeah,
I mean, like, it had been rumored for a while. We knew that Josh Sawyer was working on a quote unquote non-violent RPG, but we didn't really know that much else about it. However, we didn't get like anything on Avowed or Outer
Outer
Worlds
Worlds
2.
2. Yeah, Outer Worlds 2 is I think a big question mark for me. That game felt like it was going somewhere, and then it just ended, right? And I don't have a problem with that because I get that Microsoft was buying them. They were probably like, let's get this thing out the door, whatever our contractual obligations are, and then we'll figure out where we go from here.
Yeah,
But it felt like the first area was like so well done and defined, and then the rest of the game never felt like that. So Outer Worlds 2 is going to be interesting to me to see what it actually is. Avowed, I had no clue. No damn clue at all.
I my problem with Avowed, and I know this is going to be a really hot take, is that I don't like the world of Pillars of Eternity. I don't think it's interesting, and like I know people tell me it has all this really deep lore that's really nuanced, really exciting, but you have to dig so
Yeah.
much in that game to get to it that I can't find myself excited for Avowed. Like, the way Avowed will sell me on itself is if the gameplay looks really neat, because I am not invested in this world whatsoever.
Yeah, I think that's
So,
pretty normal, to be honest with you. I
yeah.
don't think that Pillars made a good case for its game world, to be honest with you. I mean, I've played it enough that I really do like and enjoy it, but Pillars does feel a very, I don't know. It's not as defining as Status. It's not as, you know what I mean? Like, there's not that those hooks in there that are like, wow, this feels like something I haven't seen before or heard before. It just doesn't have that going for it. And I don't know that I don't know that if I was going to set a game in its world, it would have enough of a pro or a con to really get people interested in it.
I think like the most damning thing I can say about it is that I think I kind of got bored of Pillars, say like 15 hours in,
Mhm.
and I wrote online something about like, it didn't really have much to hook me beyond it's like, it's your typical dark medieval fantasy,
Mhm.
and then someone pointed out to me it's not medieval, it's like post medieval, like classical era
Yeah.
steampunk. I'm like, I didn't pick up on that at all,
And
and I played this game for 17
and you
hours.
wouldn't, because it's got one of those like interminably long like first areas. Honestly, I really think they could have cut that first area down so much and got you into the meat of the game so much faster. But
I'm like,
you
that's
can't
so
tell.
much cooler
Yeah,
than like medieval, right?
you can't tell people though to play a game a certain way when we've all been kind of hey, this is how you play an RPG. You stay in this area until you finish everything, and nobody else has anything else for you. Then you walk away. It's why the first thing anybody tells people about Dragon Age Inquisition is get the hell out of the hinterlands, right? Um, because the game ain't going to tell you that. so, but I think,
I feel like the game really does tell you
well,
that,
yeah.
though.
I mean,
Like,
when
it
you go
keeps
into an area,
nudging
it's
you
like
out,
these dragons
and like
stop
it
you in
almost
one hit.
explicitly tells you that you will return here later.
Yeah,
Like, I don't know, man.
but
I feel like people
Pillars
are being obtuse about that one.
Pillars, I don't think has anything even like that, where it's kind of like you're solving this mystery and there's different ways to go about it, but it is a really slow first couple, probably about when you quit, if I'm thinking about it right. Let me see, 15 hours. I'm trying to think about where you would have gotten. Um,
I was in like I think the second city where you have to. I went through like a mansion and it kept kicking my ass. It took me like 80 tries because I wasn't leveled properly and I didn't know what the hell I was doing.
mhm.
I'll have to look it up later.
Yeah. So you were outside of the Gilded Veil, I'm assuming.
I think, yeah.
Yeah.
I don't remember the names. It's been
Yeah.
many, many years.
Just looking it up, I mean, like I'm trying to remember exactly where you were in the story, but it's like if you keep promising the story is going to open up and by a certain point it hasn't, that's not your fault to be kind of past it. Um,
Yeah.
so I don't have any problems with it, with you quitting there.
And this is why I say that Pillars of Eternity is really a JRPG.
Yeah, I'm with you. I bet you that you could probably say the same thing for Torment too. Their recent Torment Tides of Numenaria, that one felt very JRPG-ish to me too. When your main focus for the first couple hours is building the party, how could it not be a JRPG?
Yeah, pretty
Um,
much. All right, let's do Lovely Bones' second
mhm.
prediction, which was her wacky one. Star Fox for Switch will be announced for a 2023 release. That didn't happen in 2022, so I guess it's false, but it's also unconfirmed because it still could happen this year. We
Yeah.
could get a new Star Fox game this year. We
Uh,
don't know. And finally, her third prediction, we will get a full E3 style video demo of Insomniac's upcoming Spider Man game this year, but we won't hear anything about their Wolverine game.
mhm.
This is 50% true.
Yeah.
We
No
didn't get any
Spider-Man,
demos.
no
Well,
Wolverine. Yeah.
I'm actually surprised about this. We didn't get any demos at any point of the upcoming Spider Man game, and they're still claiming they're going to hit their late 2023 release date.
Now,
So
I'm
I
really,
don't know.
I'm really looking at Sony. They're they have to stop putting their own games against each other, right? At some point, what did Horizon released against Ragnarok, right?
No, no, no. They released
Against Elden
opposite
Ring?
ends of the year. Horizon released against Elden
Yeah,
Ring, and Ragnarok was I think, kind of had leeway.
yeah. they gotta stop doing that, right? But I don't know. I don't know if they're looking at when these games are going to be ready and trying to give them enough space that they're not trying to slam them into a calendar, and that's why they're not
Yeah,
saying
like
much. Or
the first Horizon game was
yeah, the first
beaten to a
Horizon was
pulp by Breath of the
yeah, Breath of
Wild.
the Wild.
The second Horizon game against Elden Ring, like I get that it's hard to schedule games, and it's not like either Horizon game sold poorly, but it did kind of take the spotlight away from
Yeah,
them.
you can't convince me. Hey, look, you want to play a cool open RPG? Well, I've got two options for you. One has 50 years of, precedent before it and is beloved, and one, we just kind of made up, and it's got dinosaurs in it. I
I
don't
mean,
know.
in retrospect, I started Breath of the Wild many years after it came out. I kind of wish I'd played Horizon instead.
Really,
I didn't really. I mean,
Horizon was
I don't know
fine.
if I'll ever go back to Breath of the
Yeah.
Wild. I got maybe 20 hours in. I was like, I've got other stuff to do.
Yeah, that was me here in Horizon, honestly. I got to where, like, okay, we're doing some, future was bad, past is actually what happened type shit. And I don't know. For me, that combat was rough. I couldn't kill the same dinosaur the same way 500 times.
That's fair, yeah. And the other half of her prediction was that we wouldn't hear anything about the upcoming Wolverine game, and that turned out to be correct.
Yeah.
We didn't hear jack about it.
Well, I know that Midnight Suns was a big old flop.
Commercially, yeah.
Avengers.
Critically,
Oh, we didn't mention this news. Avengers just got shit canned. They're shutting down the servers for it. I don't know if you did that or not, but
I did.
yeah. So I mean,
Yeah.
not a good time for Marvel games just in general right now. I'm not too surprised, I guess, that maybe they're not as anticipating. Trying to look at what made Guardians of the Galaxy work in literally no other Marvel game.
Yeah, the problem is Guardians of the Galaxy just didn't sell at all.
No, it was on Game Pass super fast. For example. So, yeah, I don't know. But I do know that Midnight Suns was 35% off last month, and I think it'd been out like maybe 45 days at that point. So,
Dude, that's a deep discount.
yeah. And,
Yeah.
somebody even had to correct me because I thought it was a card battler. And apparently the cards are like abilities, but it's not necessarily, it's like an XCOM ability kind of type thing.
Yeah.
Somebody
So
correct me on
instead of
that,
having like a list of attacks,
Yeah.
you go into battle with cards.
I
But otherwise, it's a tactics game.
because I definitely remember hearing card battle. I was like, okay, see you later.
Yeah, I don't think they did a very good job of marketing it, and I know that unlike third-person action gameplay, it doesn't look as flashy, but you can't bury the gameplay of a tactics game
Sure,
when you
yeah.
show it off.
I'm a tactics
I will give a credit to like say the Mario Rabbids. They did not shy away from showing off that tactical gameplay to people and explaining exactly what it was so that people knew what it was going in, and it paid dividends, at least for Kingdom Battle.
Yeah.
Can't say anything for Sparks of Hope because that apparently flopped. But for Marvel's Midnight Suns, like it was so hard to even hunt down footage of what the game looked like in action pre-release, and like that's not something you should bury. That's something you should embrace.
I had just personally gotten finished with very hyped Gloomhaven, right? Which was, everybody, oh, you got to play this, you got to play this, and I was so frustrated with that combat system. I think I uninstalled it after about 10 minutes. It was just the opposite of what I wanted in a game where you're having to choose between an attack and a move, and it's more a puzzler than an RPG, honestly.
Yeah.
Really, really, really disappointed with that game. So when I heard, oh, this is a card battle, I'm like, I'm good. But that sometimes it comes down to the way you market the stuff too, and
Absolutely,
nobody
yeah.
has. And if you would have told me that was an XCOM, I'd have been a lot more interested.
Yeah, that's exactly what I'm saying. That they should have just said this is an XCOM but with cards.
Yeah.
Instead of leaving people with the impression that it's a card battler on like a map or I don't even know. They really needed to show it off and like really just show the gameplay, get a little granular with it, put out demo videos, and get people excited to play tactics.
And it's stuff like what we're talking about with all these indie games and everything kind of working. If you got something that you're proud of and you think works, show it. Like, stop
Yeah.
being so sneaky about it. Just, if people bought Pentiment, could you imagine a harder game to sell? I mean, like, I don't know what it sold, or if it's just a Game Pass thing. It probably didn't sell shit, right? But like, it definitely got awards and acclaim and stuff. But like, I mean, that was a labor of love that was just wacky as shit that you never in a million years would have been able to explain to anybody, and people just played it, right? Because they're like, oh, it's a dialogue-y thing, I get it. But if you're proud of
Yeah,
something,
they were
show it.
not scared to show off exactly what that game
Yeah.
was. And like that game surprised me in many ways, but I was not surprised about what that game was
Yep.
when I sat down to play it.
I was actually pleasantly surprised it wasn't like a pixel hunt clicker. I didn't have to do any of that, so that's always good in my
Exactly.
book.
Yeah, I was really like I knew what it was going in, and I was pleasantly surprised about the things that it sidestepped.
Hmm.
And I think that ended up working well for the game. Like I don't know if we'll ever get numbers on this, but I think it did what Microsoft wanted it to do, which is a lot of people played it on Game Pass, were happy to play it on Game Pass, and kept their Game Pass sub because it proved again the value
You know
of
what
Game
I
Pass.
thought of that as, like, I can't stop talking about this game, but kind of thought about it as like counter programming. You know how, like, on Sunday afternoons, nobody's going to win against the NFL, so instead they'll put on like, Fast Times at Ridgemont High, or like some kind of like, goofy, feel good, fun movie for everybody else, right?
Yeah.
That's kind of what I felt like Pentiment was. I was like, they knew they couldn't compete with the God of Wars and all the other stuff that Sony had coming out, so they're like, look, here is, the this beloved indie that's, we've been kind of hiding under our sleeves for a little bit, and it just felt like counter program. It was like the exact opposite of a God of War game, but man, it's really good.
Yeah, I was happy to play it.
Yeah.
All right, let's do Luterra's
Yeah.
first prediction, which was when Braid Anniversary Edition comes out in 2022, it'll spark a 2-week torrent of discourse and then disappear from the zeitgeist entirely. I still think this will happen whenever
it'll
Braid
happen.
Anniversary Edition comes out, but it didn't end up coming out last year, so we're going to have to give this one a false. His second prediction, which was his wacky one, which is that the upcoming Mario movie will be good. Unconfirmed.
I think
It's
gonna
not
be
out
good.
yet.
I do. I mean, like, I know we've got a lot of, oh, Chris Pratt this, Chris Pratt that, as far as the voice goes, right? I get the actual concerns about the actor, but I, I think this is going to be something that gets butts in seats. I really do. And I know Hollywood right now is a mess, and who could have predicted what movies are working and what aren't, right? But I really have this feeling on this movie. I think this is going to be one of those ones that surprises everybody.
Yeah, I didn't really like what I saw in the trailer, but I also think that Nintendo's been so guarded with their property. I don't think they'd let something that was terrible get out the door.
I thought the
I don't think it'll be fantastic.
Yeah.
I think it will be an okay time, and people will say, "Okay, I get what they were going for. It was fine. It wasn't amazing, but it was not a train wreck."
I think the trailer just gave just enough to know how they were going to be playing it, which I almost want to say is like a Wreck-It Ralph feel, right? Like,
Yeah.
you're in the world and the rest doesn't matter. Let the world kind of go around you. It's just video games, right? And I think that's just enough that if they do something similar to Wreck-It Ralph, which is, hey, this is a fish out of water story about a guy who ends up in a video game world, and it's all the stuff you already know because you played this for your whole life. I think it could really work. So, but yeah,
Yeah.
I think it's going to be good. I'm with Luther on this one, but unconfirmed for now for sure.
All right, and his wacky prediction.
Yeah.
I don't think this is that wacky. But he said play to earn games will become annoyingly big this year, but then crash after government intervention or legal challenges. I get this is sort of true.
Yeah,
They
I
did
agree.
become bigger in 2022 and then completely crashed when the NFT market crashed.
Yeah.
The whole crypto market kind of collapsed. But that happened without government intervention or legal challenges. It just kind of collapsed because everybody realized it was stupid.
Yeah, and I mean, I don't know if you've been following this crypto zoo stuff on the internet
is
at
that-
large. It's Logan Paul's weird.
Yeah. I've been
NFT-based
following that.
game that's really not a game, and then he basically hired every scammer you could find, and said, "Oh, it wasn't my fault. These scammers that I hired were why you were actually scammed." But what I've been seeing to give the government a little bit of credit here is where they're going after a lot of these celebrities for endorsing this stuff and not putting that they're basically endorsing a security product rather than just like a fun NFT game thing, right? I think the
Oh yeah.
Kardashians were fined millions and basically told they cannot endorse securities because the government is looking at this stuff less as a fun game and more of the only reason you would buy this is as an investment. That's a security. And
Oh, is it like those regulations where you can't give people,
yeah,
like, you can't advertise a security legally
right. Like I can't
because
tell
there's
you to go
different
buy
regulations?
Exxon stock if I don't know, and you know what I mean. Especially if I'm like, look, I got some people on the inside. You go buy this stock, you'll get real rich. Everybody who buys this stock gets rich. You should go do it because that's what leads to pump and dumps, right? So if you don't have the ability to actually, say anything about it, like legally, I think you have to say, this is an ad. Don't do this because I said to do it, but here's, it's a Exxon sell stock or something like that. There's a million legal ins and outs of this, and that's why 99% of the time celebrities stay the hell away. But this was like a weird gray area, right? So you've got Steph Curry changing his avatar to an NFT, and then that NFT is linked to a game. And well, look, I'm not really selling you a security; I'm selling you a game. But I think the government got wise to that, and I think that's where the crackdown is kind of gonna kind of go from there.
Okay, yeah, that makes a lot of sense, and good on. I guess in the states it'd be the SEC
Yeah,
kind of
SEC,
cracking down on
they
this.
don't play.
Yeah, securities regulation is way tighter in the states than in Canada because Canada doesn't have a national securities regulator. Each province has their own
Well, I
securities
think that's why
regulator.
you started to see kind of towards the end of this little NFT game craze when they were starting to get on the other side of the SEC, they were having to figure out ways to say, actually, we're selling a service, not money that you can eventually get by cashing this out. And they had to do this through all these weird tokens and stuff, and it just got too complicated, and it scared 90% of the market away. And then all the crashes started happening on top of that. So, I mean, it definitely lessened.
I'm
We wear
glad
a
it
hat
has
on that.
because, yeah, this whole crypto market
Yeah.
is just
No.
not the greatest stuff. So yeah, it's time to make predictions for 2023. We're already kind of like a month in, a little under a month into the year, but we still got 11 months left to go. So it's a good time to make some bold
Yeah.
predictions, peer into our crystal ball, and see what's going to happen this year. So we'll just kind of go down the list. My first prediction, I've kind of categorized mine. My first has to do with Nintendo, and it's that Astral Chain 2 will be revealed during Nintendo's E3 Direct for a 2024 release. I, you know why I'm saying this?
Did you want it to be true?
I, because I really want it to be true. Like, I just watched the Astral Chain speedrun at GDQ,
Yeah.
and it was like, damn, Astral Chain really was
Yeah.
great. That game was fantastic. I want to play more of that game. I want to revisit that world. I want to play around with those combat mechanics. And maybe this is copium, but Platinum Games put the mascot character from that game, Lappy, in one of the Bayonetta 3 trailers, as like almost like they were teasing an Astral Chain game. And they're like, surprise, it's Bayonetta.
Yeah.
So
I remember
I
that
don't think
Bayonetta
they
game
do that.
when they were premiering it. There was a lot of what game is this? And then I remember people were like,
Yeah.
"Ah, strangers!" Like, nope, Bayonetta.
Yeah, that's why, because it was Lappy. So I don't think they do that if they weren't going to revisit Astral Chain.
Yeah.
I think they're going to revisit it. It's been like Astral Chain came out in 2019. I think 2023, late 2023, early 2024 is a good time for that sequel to drop.
I can see it.
All right, you got a
Oh
prediction
yeah, I'll
for
stick
us?
with Nintendo too. You ready?
Yeah.
Nintendo announces its new console, Switch 2. Bwah, 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 bwah.
You think they're
I
announcing
think
that
they
this
are.
year?
I think they gotta. You know what I mean? It's older, and then most of the gens they don't have the push that the other consoles are having it unless you can really show, hey, we're going to be really upping the number of first parties that are going to be coming out considerably. I gotta imagine that sales are starting to stagnate on the Switch. The people who want one already got one, and I don't know what's selling them anymore.
I don't know what's selling them anymore either,
Yeah,
but they're still selling to the point that Nintendo's actually increasing Switch production this year. Like,
I
that
think
to
they're
me is
increasing more with
madness,
Switch 2. That's the thing. Like,
but
it's so confusing to me how it keeps happening. I guess, but
I don't like. I'm saying this as someone who's very satisfied with their Switch and is happy to continue buying games for it. I don't know why people are still buying Switches.
yeah, I know for so long it's been we're gonna do a Switch HD or a Switch upgrade or whatever, but they've kind of pushed that off now for 2 or 3 years now. I think past.
Oh, I don't think a Switch Pro is ever going to
Yeah.
happen. I think it's going to be a Switch 2. I think, like, I don't think actually it's going to be announced this year. I think it's going to be announced next year for an early 2025 release.
Okay.
That'd be my
I think
guess.
this year for
but
2024. So we're
yeah,
we're gonna have probably a year worth of difference of who's right on this one. But I think the faster they announce it, the faster they start getting people back interested in some of the Switch. And I think you've got to at least dangle that some of these cool third parties are going to start making their way, because otherwise I think if you're just tying yourself to first parties, and it's a different feel to look at the Nintendo release versus the PC release or the Xbox release or the PlayStation release, where it's like, wow, look at all these other options, these overlaps, these, I'm choosing this console over this console. With Nintendo, it's just when are the Nintendo games coming out for the most part, right? Not all of them, but a good amount of them. And I think it's why you've been seeing more and more pressure for every single one of these live streams they do, where it's like, where is this game? Where is the Mario Kart? Where is the F-Zero? Where is the, you know what I mean? Like, there's always that.
where's Metroid Prime
Yeah.
4, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that I have to like take a step back here. It's like we're like big video game enthusiasts, right? So I think we see a lot, in especially games media, that there's this idea that the Steam Deck has kind of changed the equation. Steam Deck adoption is not that high. Like, there are not that many people who are out there thinking of the Steam Deck as their Switch replacement.
Right,
I think is a games media thing.
Yeah, I actually don't even think they're in competition. I think it's two totally different markets, right?
Yeah.
I think you buy a Nintendo console to play Nintendo games, period. And they don't play ball in any other marketplace, right? You can't say, I'm not going to get this on the Switch. I'm going to wait and get this on my PC like you can Sony games now, even. You know what I mean? You have to get their console to play their game. And I don't know that that's a value proposition when you start to kind of tighten the purse strings because of inflation and stuff. I don't know if that value is there just to get a whole console to play their 1 or 2 games a year,
Yeah, I mean, again, I think a lot of this is kind of influenced by us being really immersed in this world. That, like, for me, like, yeah, I'm only buying, say, 1 or 2 Nintendo first parties a year. Sometimes I don't even buy like new Nintendo first parties, just buy a bunch of indie games for my Switch, and that's a year where I don't play my Switch as much.
right?
But, like, how do I put this?
But wouldn't it be more
I
attractive
think it's
for
true.
like you and, let's say, the average casual Switch owner, right? Wouldn't it be attractive to you if at least you could play some third parties there, whether it's through streaming, whether it's through, actually being able to support the game, some kind of live service that doesn't look like it was cobbled together from leftover internet tubes from the 90s? I mean, like, just weird stuff like that,
I mean, that's not necessarily new hardware. That's just Nintendo
Sure.
needs to learn how to do online. Like, for me, I would just generally rather play all this stuff on PC
Yeah.
anyway. But I realize that I'm weird in that regard because I have a deep love for a mouse and keyboard that a lot of people don't. What I would say, like, I agree. I think Nintendo does need to put out new hardware eventually. Like, I'm not one of those people who thinks that Nintendo could just coast on the Switch until 2030.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
there are some people like that. I think they're out to lunch. I think within the next couple of years, they do need to put out new hardware.
Because it was the weakest console. It was weaker than the current gen of PS4 and
Yeah,
when
absolutely. It
when it
does
was
need to.
when it was launched, and now it's like, you know what I mean?
It's way behind on like. Okay, so it's not going to get like that AAA third party support, but I also don't think it needs that.
Well, I think
Like
it's even
that's
missing double A support at this point. You know what I mean? I think
that's fair. Yeah.
I think if you're trying to say, can you make this thing work on this game, you're going to be missing a lot. I don't even mean cutting edge graphics. I just mean like games that do a lot, where it's, I think you're going to start missing out on those double A's. And like we talked about last time, I think that's where the market's going. I really do. I mean, um, I used
Yeah,
a bad
like
example for it last time, but yeah.
like yeah, I think how do I put this? I think that the Switch, like I said, it needs new hardware, but what I kind of want to caution against is the idea that like how do I put this? That it's gonna like that a new Nintendo, like a Switch 2, is gonna be like this massive 4K beast of a machine that's gonna catch Nintendo up to like slightly below where PlayStation and Xbox are right now in terms of power, and we're gonna get like this massive third party AAA support on a Nintendo console again. Like I don't think that is the
Yeah, I
reality,
think that's
and
what
if people
people.
want that
Yeah.
reality, I think they're out to lunch. I think Nintendo needs new hardware because even their own first party games are starting to look a little long in
Yep.
the tooth on Nintendo
And
hardware.
maybe that's why we're
And
not seeing, the new, uh, Metroids. You know what I mean? They're like, you can't make it work. You know?
yeah, like I still think you can make games that look and run great on that machine. Like Kirby and the Forgotten Land last year was a great example of a game that took full advantage of the hardware, looked great, ran gate, was fun to play. But I do think if you want to really push forward and put out more great first party games in the next few years, then Nintendo really does need to put out that new
Which
console.
is
I think they can work on the typical like 7 or 8 year cycle and put it out in late 2024, early 2025. I think that's fine.
which is weird because I think that this isn't going to be a prediction. I'm not 100% on this, but I think we're probably one full generation away from there not being an Xbox console anymore, and
Yeah.
maybe a PlayStation 1. I think Xbox is all in. I think we'll get a PS6, but I think Xbox is all in on the service, on the Game Pass service, right? And they're
Yeah.
putting it in TVs now, they're putting in whatever they can. That's going to be kind of telling. If that's a success, I think PlayStation has to follow up with something similar where it's, hey, here's the PlayStation Pass, you get this, and it's the Hulu to Microsoft's Netflix, or however you want to look at it, right? But like, we're out of the console biz and we're into the game, streaming biz. And if Nintendo's still there, a half a gen behind, I don't know. They're gonna sell
I
it for their Mario's no matter what. I get it. I see how rabid people are with Nintendo games, but man, I would
I
not want
don't
to
think
be.
it's just. I really just don't think it's only a matter of people really want that Nintendo first party. I think there is like an attraction for say families who want to give like almost like a toy to their kids, right? I think there's an attraction in terms of having party games that you can't really play on the other consoles, like that motion controlled stuff and that fitness stuff that you can't really get on the other consoles. Like I think all that attraction is there, and there's still a place for that hardware to be there. I do think Nintendo does though need to get with the times as far as online goes, and making more of those experiences kind of available to customers through the Nintendo box, whatever it ends up being called. I think they do need to kind of get with the program there, but I don't think Nintendo's really looking to abandon hardware anytime
Yeah, I
soon.
don't think they are,
Because
but I think
like
the market might do it for them. Like
I don't think it will. I think I think people are still going to want that box that connects to their TV and has like all the doodads that allow them to do the fun party stuff and the ring stuff and the dancey stuff, like all that stuff that needs all the extra accoutrements that you don't get with your TV regularly. Until they start until your like your remote control that comes with your TV has like a
Yeah,
gyro and
D-pad
all
on
sorts
it.
of other stuff, like a D-pad. Like until all of that happens, I think Nintendo's pretty safe in the hardware game. But I don't know. Maybe like I'm thinking 10, 15 years out. I'm not thinking 30, 40
Yeah,
years
yeah,
out
yeah.
right now.
All right.
All
You
right.
want another one from me? All
Sure,
right, all
sure.
right. This one, I think it's like already happening. I don't know what to degree this is going to happen more and more, but I think we're going to see the end of live streaming being tied to video games and more of just something that celebrities and personalities do, and the gameplay is irrelevant. Um, I don't know. This isn't me saying Twitch is done, right? This is me just saying that I think YouTube, Facebook, all these other companies are going to start to figure out that what people are really watching when they're watching a live stream is an entertainer, right? They're
Yeah.
watching and I think once the wheels start to spin, Hollywood and all these other studios, they understand entertainers. They can market entertainers. They can make entertainers, right? What they can't make is someone who's good at video games, right? And I think we're slowly going to start to see live streaming separated from these video games, or the video game is more of a background thing as the entertainer streamer um, is kind of presenting whatever they're going to talk about that day. You see this kind of with the bigger streamers these days. They'll play a
Oh, they
game.
do a lot of like just
Yeah.
chatting streams or even IRL
So
streams. Like
years ago it was
I like today I just saw a clip of like Pokimane walking around Seoul
yep,
in Korea.
yep. And you're starting to see less and less of it tied to any type of gaming, um, where they'll play with their friends for 20, 30 minutes. They'll do a game for a little bit. They'll do something goofy or something, but then it's just talking to chat. And that interactivity I think is a lot easier to sell. It's a lot easier to market. You don't have to worry about the games because it used to be, especially on Twitch, what game do you stream? All right. Okay. Well, you're a WoW streamer. So, I'm going to watch you play WoW 9 times out of 10. And, but I'm seeing a lot of people moving away from that. Right. And they're doing either variety or just straight up just chatting. 2, 3 years ago on Twitch, just chatting was kind of a dead, genre or whatever they call it, on Twitch where you look up who's doing what. Now everybody's just chatting. And even it's the big names, it's the big numbers. They're just
Yeah.
sitting around talking to their audience. So, once people
I think actually like the VTuber revolution was a big part of
Yeah.
this. Because like yeah, VTubers still do play lots of video games, don't get me wrong, but a lot of their streams, like they'll spend the first I don't know, hour of their stream chatting and then they'll play a video game and then they'll do another hour of just like reading chat messages.
and that's where I think it's going. I really do. I really get the sense that like it's going to be weird. It's almost going to be more odd to see your streamer play a game on Twitch than interacting with the audience. I think it's going to have that exact opposite effect that it used to have. Oh, why? Okay, he's not talking to chat right now. He's playing a game. I'm not as interested, right? I see this happen with myself sometimes, and it's weird because I used to only tune in for game streams, because they were playing a game I was interested in, and I've seen myself less and less do that. Now I'm kind of annoyed when the streamer is playing a game because he's not talking to chat, instead he's playing whatever, right? Which is weird because that's not what this really started out as, and for a while it was you get quiet people who are really great at the game, right? They're the best whatever player in the world, and you just watch
Yeah.
their gameplay. They don't talk much, but you're like, oh my god, this guy's so good. Who cares, right? Then you started to get the people who were maybe not as good, but they were funny or they had cool insights or whatever, right? And then now like it's like the final revolution is like, man, maybe I'll play a game. I don't know. Maybe I'll play a game today, but I'm just gonna hang out and talk to you guys instead. And man, that parasocial relationship builds and builds and builds no matter what, right? So, I think we're not long to, NBC Studios figuring out, how to market some guy on Twitch and make this shit work. But um, that's where I see it going. I think the money is just too much for people to just sit there and let people get popular without agency and representation and that kind of stuff. So I think you're going to kind of see the death of the homebrew streamer, which is, some funny guy with a mic in his bedroom. And I really, really think that it's going to start to be that kind of phonies versus legit type thing that we're so used to. But, we usually know who wins out, and it's the money, right? So I don't see any reason why Twitch has to be the only place that has streams. but they've been very resilient to anybody else trying to get into that space. Even with YouTube buying away streamers now, you know. Um,
What I think is actually going to happen is that they're going to use existing platforms like YouTube and Twitch. And it's going to be like we already have, like a lot of these people already have media representation. We're going to see more media companies kind of get in on this and like eventually big bucks, like creating new streamers out of basically whole cloth.
right.
And it's going to be exactly what you say, that battle of legit versus phonies, except for the phonies, so-called phonies, are going to present themselves as legit,
Yeah.
like grassroots people.
Right.
And it's going to be just like the music industry where people try to ferret out
Yeah.
industry
Who's the plan?
plans.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think it's harder and harder to do though when you've got big streamers who they grew their community from nothing. Sometimes but then how easy you can buy your way to the top of Twitch. It's not hard. It's not even expensive. And then you're putting in 10 15K viewers. Doesn't sound like a lot to a lot of numbers, but man, those people who sit there and watch 8 9 ads in a row, that is hard. That is hard to do in this day and age, to tell somebody I'm gonna get, men age 18 to 30 to watch 10 ads in a row. They'd be like, "You're crazy." I'm telling you, they would say, "You are insane." The only people who does that is the NFL. But guess what's happening every single day on Twitch? you know, and it's just gonna keep happening. And eventually, I think that you're gonna see it be more money, more structured, more everything, and then that's when it's gonna kind of start to pivot. I think this is the year where you start seeing top streamers not even playing games, basically.
All right. That is a lot to chew on. Let me deliver my second prediction. This one concerns Microsoft.
All right.
And I think I've been saying this every year for the past 3 years, but this is the year. This is the year. Compulsion's new game will be revealed this year. So Microsoft bought the studio back in 2018 when they went on that buying spree. They've been working on something for 5 years. We know it's a third-person action adventure game. It's the only thing we know about it. It's time to see what they've been working on, right? Like, it's been 5 years.
Yeah.
Come on.
Yeah.
Like, and what was their last game? We Happy Few in 2018. A game that no one liked.
Yeah, that's tough.
They've got to put out something,
Yeah.
right? Microsoft wouldn't have bought them if they didn't have something.
I
I really want to see that something.
I gotta wonder, because now Microsoft owns Arcane as well, right? So
Yeah.
you've got Arcane delivering Deathloop, which you had some opinions on, right? And then you've got Compulsion, which always felt like kind of like a spin-off of Arcane, and I know they were, right?
They were not.
They weren't?
They're a completely different company. Compulsion is based in Montreal.
Were they owned at some point by Arcane?
No, they're an indie studio in Montreal. I think maybe because Arcane's French and
Yeah.
Compulsion is
they had
located in
some
a French-speaking.
I thought they had some, but I guess maybe it's just an
Maybe
art
they had
style
some
thing.
overlap in staff or something.
Yeah.
Yeah, it might be an art style thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, I wonder how they fit into the world of Microsoft these days. But I like We Happy Few more than most. I feel like it really missed on the what it was trying to do. But I like Contrast a lot.
Oh yeah, I'm a contrast evangelist. That game was not well liked, but I love that game.
Yeah, and I think they've got a really cool eye for what looks neat to me, and it really always up my alley. But yeah, I don't know. I don't know where Compulsion would even be working on for Microsoft. It seems like they did give a lot of these studios a lot of leeway to work on like legitimate passion product stuff that they wanted to do, right? I don't just mean Pentiment, but also like stuff like Grounded, right? That did not seem like something that anybody forced them to do, right? That just seems like, hey, we got a cool idea. I love that game.
I've been playing that game with some of my co-op buddies. It's fun as hell.
And so I do think that
really hard though.
Yeah. I think Microsoft's making the right types of decisions with, hey, let these studios let them have some time to breathe, let them develop the kind of stuff they want, but every now and then you got to be come in with a little bit with a harder hand and say, hey, it's been 5 years. Are we getting anything out of you guys or no? But yeah, I think as long as you're delivering right now, I think you can definitely get inside the good graces of Microsoft and get a little bit of permission to work with what you want to work on. But I think you've got to actually deliver at some point too. That's always when it gets a little dicey, right? Um,
I would guess that they're working on I guess that they're working on a mostly linear third-person action adventure game. That's what I would
I wouldn't be
guess.
surprised if it was a We Happy Few, maybe not sequel, but kind of like in that kind of vein, you know? Um,
Yeah, I think Microsoft doesn't have a lot of those in their lineup, right? They don't have games that you would think of as like Sony has like their prestige third-person action adventure
yeah,
games. Microsoft doesn't really have that, and I think they could stand to get
yeah.
that. So if they think Compulsion's a studio that can deliver them that, then that's great. Um, I'm not sure they are, but I have high hopes for
Yeah,
whatever they
I
put
think
out.
they could get there. They, like I said, both those games were ambitious, and it's not. I mean, sometimes your ambition doesn't meet your talent, right? But I think they were trying to do a lot with it, right?
Oh, I think Contrast, the only problem with that game is that it's janky as
Yeah,
hell. Otherwise, I think it succeeds at everything it sets out to do perfectly
yeah,
well. We Happy Few I can't speak to because I haven't played it. But yeah, they
good. I mean,
like
it didn't get everything it wanted to get, right? It was a little bit kind of ham-fisted, a little bit what it was trying to do, but it wasn't bad. And we're saying this in the background also of like Microsoft laying off tons and tons of people, but I do wonder, is there some kind of movement within these studios to kind of like, hey, look, what we kept is for a reason. You got to start delivering some of this stuff.
I think 5 years is probably the limit at which they can
Yeah,
hold off on showing stuff
I
off.
agree.
Like 2-3 years when I was like saying, "Oh yeah, Compulsion's got to show something off." That was maybe premature, but the expectations rise with the longer we have to wait, right? So first I was expecting a double A project out of them, and now I'm expecting
Triple A.
like a full
Yeah,
triple A Sony Prestige level spectacle from
you've
them.
had
Can
5 years.
they
That's
deliver? We'll see.
that's pretty fair. I think too. I
Yeah.
think that's pretty fair. Um, Let me get my
All right.
third one out of the way. This one, I don't, this might be my wacky one if we're still doing wacky, but I think this one is probably like the furthest in some ways, but also kind of the easiest one. I think we're going to start seeing studios becoming more open to collaborations that are substantial. Think like Raving Rabbids or Mario Rabbids, right?
Yeah.
I'm starting to think that maybe you're going to start seeing companies being okay with letting other studios outside their own, maybe even control, get a crack with their IP. I think that,
Yeah, we saw that with Cadence of Hyrule as
mhm.
well.
And I think the reason is you don't always know what makes games work, but it would be fun to see this game in this different world, right? And you saw all these kind of studios kind of mishmashed around now. And there's no reason that you can't make some of these licensing type deals work, which is essentially what they are, right? Um,
Yeah, like you heard about that Halo leak, which Jason Schreier and Jez Corden say is not
343 being the
really true.
the stewards of the Halo, but not the developers. But what if we reopened Halo Wars and gave it to the Company Hero guys? You know what I mean? Like, or like,
Yeah,
there's a lot of options out there for games that don't get explored because the studio just doesn't have the expertise to do it, right? And I can really start seeing a lot of studios letting their guards down, not just because of the Mario Rabbit stuff, right? But also because you're starting to see this like, hey, what if I stick a near automata, I don't know, whatever,
Automata.
automata?
Yeah,
Yeah. What if I stick that in your Rainbow Six game? Yeah, sure. Now they've got a deal to you can play as B2 in Rainbow Six
two
Siege,
B.
right?
Yeah,
What is it?
two
2B.
B.
I haven't played it,
Yeah,
Keith, but a lot of that is happening right now. You're getting Destiny and Fortnite. You're getting Fortnite and Destiny. You're getting like I think Rainbow Six had even more deals. I think PUBG had a near thing as well. I mean, but like you're
maybe
starting to see that kind of mix.
there was like that big Nier Automata raid in Final Fantasy
Right.
14.
Yeah, and I don't
Yeah,
think they're alone in saying, "Look, we this is a cool hit that a lot of people love, and it kind of weirdly makes sense, even in our own universe for these characters to show up. So, sure, we'll shop them around. Go ahead, and have fun with them." And
yeah. Remember Master Chief in
yeah,
Fortnite? How the hell did that happen? But sure,
and
go for it.
I mean, Fortnite's a great example because they basically have somehow they've become like the Lego version where you can stick whatever you want in it, right? And Who cares if Superman and X-Men fight? Everybody paid their money, right? But I can see that start.
Yeah, sure. I'd love to see Goku and Cortana wailing on each
Right,
other.
right. And I think what's opening the eyes to a lot of these studios is things like Multiversus, right? That WB
Yeah.
games where it's like, holy crap, we own all these IP and we don't do anything with any of them in video games. Why don't we just stick them in a game together? And I think the next step for that is, wow, we own all these game IPs. We're not really doing anything with them. Why don't we just let hey, this studio, you're looking for a project. We've got an idea we want to do with one of our characters. You up for it? I think it's
Like, I think we are starting to see those screws loose a bit. Like, I don't think, like, if you'd said this 8 years ago, I said no, you're out to lunch. But we got a new Monkey Island game last year, and that's an IP that Disney had jealously guarded for years.
And at the same time, had not known what to do with it. Right? They just protected the IP, but at some point, some guy somewhere's like, this thing could be making money. It's not making any money. Do you want it to go make money, yes or no? And if you say yes, well, look, hey, there's 10 million studios who have figured out the Monkey Island formula since Monkey Island was a thing. You loan the IP to one of them, they make the game, they create a positive image, and the thing gets more popular instead of less, right? Which is important in this day and age, right? And also on top of that, hey, guess what? You get a good game out of it, and you make money rather than just
exactly
on an IP.
Like, Disney probably made a pretty penny off Return to Monkey Island, which was well received.
And there's so many examples of that out there. If you start to look around about these like little, who owns this? This thing's in hell. People have been clamoring for a No One Lives Forever game for as long as I can remember. No one knows who owns it. Well, you know what? Someone owns it. Why don't we just say we're just going to make a new one? Whoever sues us, to see what happens. And
I mean, that would be great, but I think that's the case. That's a dead buried franchise,
it, right? Court says who owns it. Okay, well now would you rather make some money off of No One Lives Forever or no money off of No One Lives Forever, right? So it's, I'm not saying that would be a wise business decision, especially if you put a lot of game development into it, but it's really weird.
I mean, I would love for that business decision to be made. I just don't think it's going to happen. But, like, there's a reason I don't run companies. I would run every single one into the ground.
I would just love, though, to like, like, it seems so no-brainer to me. And I'm guessing there's some types of reasons for some of these games, but people have been clamoring for stuff forever, and there's studios out there who would be a perfect fit that are making that type of game, but that game is just not being made, and it's frustrating. And I know, a lot of times, hey, would you rather make your own IP or would you rather work within our own studios? But sometimes the fit is just the fit, and if you can make it work and you can sell it on me, I bet you Ubisoft's one big hit in the past, 10 years has been that, I mean, not one big hit, but like that wasn't an Assassin's Creed, a Far Cry, one of the Ubisoft regulars has been the Mario Rabbids stuff, right? I mean, that was a critical.
I mean, they did follow that up. Yeah. Kingdom Battle did really well. Sparks of Hope apparently undersold, which is a shame. I mean, I'm not part of the problem. I bought the game. I still haven't played it yet.
Definitely not part of the problem if you bought it. But yeah, you get what I'm saying, though. Like that, I think people are going to start looking around and saying, well, hey, it's not a big deal that we put Master Chief in Fortnite, right? So, I mean, what if we don't...
Like, that didn't compromise the integrity of the Halo franchise.
So what if we just say, hey, you know what are you guys doing for the next Fortnite season? All right, well, you want to do some more with Halo, you want to put it in, you want to have a whole game mode, you want to go for it, and that's where I think we're going to start eventually getting is kind of, are these game system sellers? Probably, but I don't think Microsoft cares, and I don't think Sony's going to play ball anyway, besides PC. But otherwise, man, just start selling these games left and right. Let's get more good games out of some of these IPs rather than someone sitting on them so no one else can make one,
Absolutely. I'm hoping, what, it's time for a new Quake. Like a new genuine Quake with a single-player campaign. Make that happen.
And there's no way Bethesda, couldn't be the ones to do it, especially with the way the Dooms have been running, right? So...
Exactly. id. I don't know what id's working on these days. Come on, id. Make a new Quake. Why not?
I have no clue.
Yeah, John Carmack no longer works for id. I have no idea what he's doing these days. Yeah.
All right, what's
Carmack's a special soul. This one is both a Sony and Nintendo one. And this might be really spicy. I think Marvel's Spider-Man 2 is going to go toe-to-toe with Legends of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom in Game of the Year contests at Games Media.
Really? Game of the Year contest, huh?
Yeah.
Hmm.
I think Tears of the Kingdom is gonna be like the shoe in to win Game of
Yeah,
the Year at
I
the Game
I was more
Awards.
surprised about the Spider-Man angle of it because I don't know. I mean, maybe I'm alone here, but I kind of felt like I was playing Batman a lot of times when I was playing Spider-Man.
Oh, I didn't even play Marvel
Oh, gotcha,
Spider-Man.
gotcha.
I'm basing this just off hype
Yeah.
and statements that have been made. I think what Insomniac, for all their flaws as a developer, is I think really good at taking taking what worked or what didn't work from previous titles and like learning from it and iterating on what they built. Like Miles Morales is like something that iterated on Marvel Spider-Man. Marvel Spider-Man 2, I think, is going to iterate on Miles Morales and Marvel Spider-Man 1 and be something bigger and better than either of
Do you
those
think though
games.
that like maybe Game of the Year voting or voters or I mean not just Game of the Year kind of means something to everybody else, but don't you kind of feel like they're so conditioned now for that big dramatic Sony third person action adventure that it would be hard for something like a pure event action game to win?
I mean, I think it is going to have those cinematic
Okay.
elements. I think it's going to have all those narrative elements that people really like, while also being an open world game. I'm thinking of it like kind of like how Ghost of Tsushima
Yeah.
had that all those cinematic elements, but was also like a really dope open world action adventure game. I think they could pull it
Yeah.
off. I mean, I'm probably not going to play it because I don't have a PS5 and I'm not planning to get one, but I think they can pull off making a really good
I would love
Spider-Man
it.
game.
I mean, I would love if a straight up like I'm trying to think about this as almost like an Oscars thing, but I love it when genre movies win. I love it when genre games win. It's the same kind of thing. I get it. The best game of the year probably was Elden Ring or um, God of War, one of those two. I get it, but like sometimes you want the weirdo game that broke a lot of molds to win instead of the thing that you already feel like there's too much of, right? Um,
Oh, I had my fingers crossed for Xenoblade
yeah,
Chronicles 3, knowing full well it had no
that's a
chance.
good example,
Um,
right? Like, I mean,
but
that is a proud of itself genre game right there, you know?
I mean, that is a game that not only broke kind of the mold for what gets voted on as Game of the Year, but also broke the mold for its own
Yeah.
genre. Like, it's a very weird JRPG. So, like, yeah, I fully agree. I want more of those mold breaking games to be in that conversation. I think Marvel Spider Man 2 is going to be very much in that Sony prestige mold, but I also think it's time for. I also think it's going to do something a little bit different. I don't think it's going to be just like, here's Spider Man, you're slinging webs, you're
Yeah.
flying across New York City, doing whatever Spider Man does. I think it's going to have something a little bit more to it than that. But again, I'm saying this is someone who hasn't played the first Marvel Spider-Man, so I might be completely out to lunch here. Do you have any more
Nope,
predictions?
those were my three. I think there's a pretty fair chance Switch 2's announced this year. I don't think it's coming out obviously, but I think announced. I
Yeah, I don't think you're
I
completely
think
out
the
to lunch on that one. I can see it
streaming.
happening.
I think the streaming is kind of more of a foregone conclusion than a prediction. But I think when you start to watch, like track the hours of who's streaming what, bet you are
Yeah.
going to see a lot of dips in gaming. So I feel pretty good about mine. And then
All right,
the
I
collab
got
one I feel
like,
good about
oh,
too.
yes, for sure. I got one more
Sure.
prediction, and this one concerns Ubisoft.
Uh oh.
I think Ubisoft is going to shutter one of its studios
Yeah.
this year.
That's yeah. I think that's a very strong prediction. Which one? Shanghai? You think?
I think Shanghai is going to stay, but my guess would be Pune,
Mm,
because Pune was the studio that was on the Sands of Time remake. Their lead developers, they're pulled off that game because it just wasn't coming
yeah.
together. So, like, just to give a bit of context here, Ubisoft has been unique among a lot of tech firms in that it hasn't done mass
Yeah.
layoffs. Like the only other firm I can think of in that boat is Apple. Apple has not done mass layoffs.
You know, I
And
want to say one thing about those layoffs too is, there was a little bit of controversy with, I can't say his name, but I'm talking about the CEO, kind of saying, "Hey, the ball's in your court," right? There's a lot of
Yves
Yeah,
Guillemot, yeah.
and I get why there would be controversy, but I also get what he's saying in a bit of a way. Like we've trusted you guys. We didn't fire. We didn't do mass layoffs. We're standing by you and developing these games still. We need you guys to deliver, the types of games that we've, more or less become famous for. So I think it was a gaffe maybe in, saying it the way he said it, but I also do kind of get where he's coming from. Like for a while now, they've kind of delivered these secondhand experiences, that feel reminiscent of themselves a lot of times. Um,
I think, I think that's the kind of message that should be directed towards
sure.
management more so than the rank and file, though, because Ubisoft's problems have been
Yeah.
with management not taking care of issues relating to labor abuse or harassment at their studios, with management undermining workers and like nixing great ideas. I like that is the cultural problem that Ubisoft has, and I think that is where Guillemot should be kind of addressing his concerns rather than saying, "All right, poor animator,
Yeah.
work double hard."
You're
Like,
bad animating is why we're losing. Yeah.
I get, and like, don't get me wrong. I think Ubisoft has been surprisingly good to its workers from the perspective of not laying them off. But I think, like, I don't know. I'm gonna like kind of betray my opinions here. I think that should be just like the baseline
Yeah.
standard. Like, I don't think firms should be laying their expertise off because then, like, you're just hamstringing yourself in the end. You're gonna have to hire that expertise back later. All these talented people are going to go work in some other software industry and like make accounting software or spreadsheet software or whatever and make bigger bucks doing it. So you're throwing away the expertise and then you got to go train up new people to replace the people you fired because you couldn't keep them on through lean
Right.
times. And Ubisoft has at least done that in keeping them on through lean times. They famously don't churn employees. They send them to like a blank room where I guess they do professional, quote unquote, professional development for a few weeks until they can get on to their next project. It's kind of like weird and demoralizing and almost a little bit dystopian, but at least they're not getting
Yeah.
fired,
Well,
right?
I hope Red Storms. That's our local Ubi. I hope they hang in there. They're more
Yeah,
like a support studio at this point, but they were doing the VR Sam Fisher game. I think that a lot of people were initially excited about, and then kind of disappointed, and then everybody hates VR. So I understand why that one got canceled, maybe more than the other ones. Um, but yeah, it's really weird, and they've got a couple of games out that I'm interested in, and I don't know how to fix. I don't know how to fix the idea that they're coming out with 7 out of 10, 8 out of 10 games, but people are just sick of them. I don't know how you fix that. That's really weird. It's like this ice cream's too good all the time. You know what I mean? Um,
I think like it's part of that is just not predicting trends in the
mhm.
market, like not chasing. I think a lot. How do I put this? I think it's not exactly complacency. It's more like they didn't try to find the next big thing.
Right, but if I told
They,
you, I think the best Assassin's Creed I ever played was Valhalla, right? Like I think a lot of people are like, oh, no, I think it's the best one I've ever played, and like,
I think a lot of people would
right,
disagree with
right,
that.
but
That's the
like if you
problem.
tried to like quantify why do I think it was bad, it will read like a list of too much of good things, basically, right? It was too long. It had too much. But that. Well, wait. Don't you like stealth assassination missions? This game has more than any other one. Like, it
I think it's a lot of. I think it's also
right,
fatigue, right? Like I already did this for 100 hours in Origins, and then another 100 hours in Odyssey. Do I really
right,
want to do
right,
this for another 100 hours in Valhalla? Well, I'd say why'd you even buy the
right.
game
But
then,
then
right?
exactly,
But
and then from a business perspective, right? Well, we just gave them more of what they just told us they liked, but they don't like it now. You see what I mean? Like that would drive me crazy if I was like, some type of like focus group guy, and it's like, wait, you told us this is all the stuff you like. It's made up 95% of this game, and but you don't like it. You know?
yeah, because they're
Yeah.
tired of it now, and I think that's fair. People taste change. The market moves on. Like that happens.
But would you put out an Assassin's Creed then that year and just say, well, this will let a certain percentage of people get untired of this?
I mean, I think you put out that Assassin's Creed, but I think you also have to put out something that isn't an open world action adventure game. which they've been
kind of getting there.
like
You know, I mean, like,
they failed
yeah.
to do for many years.
So we'll see what happens. I think you're right. I think one of them is going to. I thought Shanghai, but we'll see which one it is.
I would say if it's going to be a Chinese studio, I think Chengdu.
Yeah.
Shanghai's been Shanghai was established, I think, back in '96. It's been there for a while.
Yeah.
Chengdu's a little bit newer.
I just think in terms of what they've been
they're a
working
support
on,
studio.
they're
They mostly do localization work. I think they can go.
yeah. What about? I mean, because you got Beyond Good and Evil, right? Where's
Yeah.
that going?
I don't know what studio's working on it. My guess that's probably based in France because that's where Michel Ancel was based out of. But now that Ancel has been, let's say, politely dismissed for being quote unquote difficult, now that he's no longer in the picture, I think they can move it around anywhere. But probably the team that was working on it is France based.
Yeah, and I mean, it's tough because I'm hoping Red Storm hangs in there. They've made my favorite games ever, and they're my local boys along with Epic, right? But
Yeah.
them kind of catching the VR short stick, I would say,
Yeah.
in a lot of ways. I mean, I feel like VR is a dead end. I've always have. I'd be love for them to be the ones who prove me wrong, though. But man, I don't know. I don't know how you make 90% of the stuff that they work on work in VR. But sure. I got
Maybe they'll find a way.
It just seems like every year has been the year for VR since 2012, right? Yeah.
We'll see. Yeah. All right. So those are our predictions for the year. Let us spend the last little bit of this podcast talking about games that we are anticipating in 2023. I've got a huge list of games. I made a list of over 100 games that I might be interested in this year. I'm not even going to play. I'm going to play like a tenth of those games in the end.
I've only got 50.
But only 50. Only 50.
Else. No, I mean these are kind of like the ones that when you go through the list, they pop out to you and you're like, yeah, this is one. I mean, I could definitely see myself paying for, I guess, or I'll download it on Game Pass or something like that.
Yeah, the game I'm actually most looking forward to is The Plucky Squire. Do you remember the trailer when it dropped and it looked really charming? Yeah. It's got that mixture of like 2D platforming and 3D platforming, but also it's got almost like that some like mini game stuff where it's kind of like your top-down action RPG, and it's got like a fighting game in there too.
It was like, yeah, it kind of felt like a Sunday morning after or a cartoon type show, right? Like Toy Story almost.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I think it looks really dope. I would love another, me. I like my 3D platformers. I don't think it's doing anything super original, like that 2D 3D transition thing. Super Mario Odyssey did that, and it looks a lot like It Takes Two, but single player. But you know what? Both of those are great games. If you wanna steal from the best, right?
This is a game where the art style gets me excited about playing it. Not like, okay, it's another pixel art. You know what I mean? Like it's just doing just enough to remind you of something you're nostalgic for. This looks like a legitimately cool art style that I could get into.
Yeah, for sure. What's something you're anticipating?
I'm gonna sound like an idiot when I say this, but damn it, that Transformers game. I don't know why. It's just in my mind so much. Reactivate. I had to get 100.
Reactivate. I keep forgetting what it's called.
There is something about that hook that they've got in there where it's like one of my favorite settings is not post-apocalyptic. It's like mid-apocalyptic. I don't know how else to describe it, right? The apocalypse is going on. Like we need something to stop it, right? It's like the kind of feeling that like Terminator always toyed with, but then they tried to do it and felt like shit, right?
So I'm thinking kind of like Pacific Rim-ish.
Yeah, exactly. Like this is it. Like like we're fighting right now for survival, and on the other end of this is Fallout, but we're not there yet. That setting for a Transformers has me really, really intrigued. That's what it looks like, at least. Now, I might be totally wrong. I'm going off like a 2-minute clip, right? There's been some leak stuff. I've been following it. I found a little screenshot where there's like a paper doll and there's like weapons with like stats and values. I'm like, yeah, I can really get into this, I don't know why. Like we talked about this last time when it was announced at E3. But Transformer games and Transformers movies are like two opposite ends of the spectrum for me, right? Like basically the games have been nothing but hits and the movies have been nothing but stinkers for so long. And the movie kind of fixed that with Bumblebee a little bit, right? Like which was a reboot. So I'm wondering where this game goes, but
Yeah.
it's the one game that I want to kind of see, and it might not even be a 2023 game, honestly. We know next to nothing about it, but it's the one game that like I feel like I'm more intrigued to learn more about, and I don't know what it's about at all. And I think that's probably a good thing to be for a lot of games right now, where the other stuff is like I can guess what it's kind of going to be, and I'm just hoping it's what stuff I like and not bad, basically.
Do you know what studio's working on
Yeah.
it? Okay. Because I was wondering if it's one of the studios that has experience working with Transformers, like Fall of Cybertron, War for Cybertron. Those were all games that came out and were well
Mhm.
received. So if it's a studio that's worked on Transformers license before, I think
Well,
there's
remember
reason to be
this though,
excited.
but like also in some ways, some of those Transformers games built the studios as they came up around it. You know what I mean? Like New
Yeah.
Moon, I think that's who made the first couple, right? Um, like they
Do you mean New Moon or
High
High
Moon, I think
Noon?
it was High Moon. I think you're right. Yeah,
High Moon.
New
Yeah.
Moon was like the horror movie. It's just stuff like that. But yeah, I mean, like they kind of came up around them, and I think they were just doing like ports and localizations before, and then they kind of got really into it from there. So I could see Transformers being kind of is it revival? And I'm questioning myself. Um, I could really see it kind of being something that I would be really interested in getting into if it's the kind of deep customization Transformers game I've always wanted.
So I'm looking at this
Hmm.
now. The developers are Splash
Oh, there
Damage
you go.
and Bulkhead
Splash Damage
Interactive.
is very solid. That's a good sign if it's going to be a shooter. I'll tell you that. They're the enemy
What did
territory
Splash
guys.
Damage make? Okay. And Bulkhead are the people who made the Turing test.
Okay. Well, that's kind of an interesting collab then. Yeah.
Yeah, because Turing test is like a first person
Yeah.
puzzler.
Splash Damage did Gears of War 4 multiplayer too. And they're
Okay. That's a really interesting
right.
mix. If it's like a Transformers game that has kind of more exploratory, like almost narrative adventure kind of elements and environmental puzzling, I think that could be
And
really neat. Like
yeah,
using the Transformers powers to solve puzzles. Sure, give
They
me
they've
that.
got. I mean, Splash Damage has a pretty interesting studio history if you look into it. They had two bombs, which you'll probably know right away. Brink, and I think
Oh
Brink
yeah.
is weirdly a little ahead of its time. I played a lot of Brink when it came out, and I was like, people aren't going to get this, and they didn't. That's not a surprise. 2011, people were still very much into like the Call of Duty Halo type shooter, right? They were not ready for what Brink was bringing, and they also had Dirty Bomb, which was a great, great, great game that just never kind of caught on. That's kind of like a free to play hero shooter, kind of in the Team Fortress vein a little bit, but um,
Yeah.
and then they wanted to do like Gears 4, Gears 5, Master Chief. They've done a lot of spec work for Microsoft, I guess, but a really interesting studio. And so if they're involved, I'm way more interested. And then
Oh yeah, they did Gears
yeah,
Tactics.
uh,
Oh neat. They've been kind of all over
yeah.
the map. Huh, this could be really
So
interesting.
you know, I think people are going to think I'm crazy, but I'm telling you, there's potential.
Oh, I don't think this is crazy at all. I think this is worth being excited about. Sorry. Let me name
Yeah.
another one. I am really pumped for Master Detective Archives
Mm.
Raincode. I'm saying this as a big fan of Danganronpa, and this is made by not within Spike Chunsoft, though they're publishing it. It's made by a studio led by the Danganronpa writer Kazutaka Kodaka, and he's brought with him a lot of that team over to his new studio, 2Kyo Games, uh, including the artist for Danganronpa, Rui Komatsuzaki, and composer Masafumi Takada. So it like they've unveiled this. The art looks very Danganronpa esque. The music is very Danganronpa esque, but the gameplay looks very different. Instead of being like this visual novel with first person exploration segments, it's like a third person detective game.
Now, just gathering from you, I've always known the gameplay is what you don't like usually about the series, right? So, is this exciting for you? Is
Uh,
this you're more worried? What are you thinking?
Oh, I'm one of the weird people who likes the
Oh,
gameplay
really?
in the
Okay.
Danganronpa
I think
series,
you're the
but
only one.
you've probably heard from other
Yeah, yeah.
people that the gameplay isn't that great and they're in it for the story. I totally get that. I'm broken inside. I like the crappy mini games that everyone else hates. But here it's a little different because you are going to be walking around solving a mystery, doing your third person adventure game stuff, and then you're also going to have some of that wacky minigame nonsense like the Danganronpa Trials, just in like more of a dark fantasy setting rather than like your high school battle royale kind of setting.
Okay.
So I think this looks really neat. I like the art style they're going for. I like that neon drenched, almost vaguely cyberpunky thing they're doing, but it's mixed with gothic. It's like gothic cyberpunk.
Okay.
I really like what they're doing
That
here.
sounds really cool, actually.
Yeah. What's another game
Oh
you're
man,
interested
this one I think I don't know what I'm expecting from it, but I'm hoping it lives anywhere near as close as my memory of the original did, and that's Space Marine 2. I had so much fun with Space Marine 1. It feels like a game out of time, though. I don't know how possibly they could live up to my own memories of Space Marine itself. But yeah, I'm really kind of curious where it goes because
when did the last Warhammer 40K Space Marine come out?
oh man, it must have been like 2007. Let me see.
Yeah, because it's been a while.
Yeah, it has been. I know it was an Xbox 360. 2011. Man, I'm way off. I know it was an Xbox 360 game, but I
Yeah,
thought it was
but
earlier.
yeah, over a decade is
Yeah,
still a long
yeah.
time. Yeah.
So I mean, the play style of this game is something that nobody's ever really been able to catch up to, and I love one thing about it. There's no like regenerating health or regenerating shields. If you want to regenerate, you got to go fight, and it feels very Warhammery, right? Um, so yeah,
There's a skull in Halo that does
yeah,
that, right?
yeah.
Yeah.
So I really like that idea. But I don't know where they're gonna go with some of these ideas. It does feel like a little bit like it feels a little bit like some of the ideas of Warhammer have kind of faded in time because it had a lot of like the multiplayer was very like paper rock scissors. This class beats this class. This class beats this class. But I think overall the goal for it is gonna probably be just make the multiplayer feel just good enough. But I'm really looking forward to a story that just lets me fight as a space marine that just kills everything. See where that goes. But um, a lot of fun memories of that game, and that was one of the last that I can remember, at least, single player shootery type campaigns that I really ended up enjoying up until Titanfall 2, probably.
I think this is actually going to be a big year for the single player third person
Hmm.
shooter because we're also getting Scars Above this year. We're getting Sin Duality. Uh, we're getting Wanted
Yeah,
Dead.
Stalker. I
Like
think
this is the
Stalker too, right?
Stalker's first
Is it
person.
okay? That's
Yeah.
interesting. Yeah,
I mean, we're also getting a lot of first
yeah.
person shooters this year. We're getting Sulaco. We're getting Stalker 2. Gosh, I listed a bunch of others. Atomic Heart.
Oh, Atomic Heart.
I think it
That
is
comes
going to
out.
be.
We'll get to that next.
Yeah, that's actually the next one I was going to mention is
Yeah.
Atomic Heart. I'm excited to get like this Bioshocky kind of shooter, but with a different aesthetic instead of like Art Deco
Yeah.
or like that turn of the millennium Disneyfied Americana. Not turn of the millennium, turn of the century
Feels
Disneyfied
weird to be
Americana.
sick of Art Deco, doesn't it? Like it was a style I thought
Yeah,
I'd never get sick of. Now I'm like, all right, do something else.
yeah. So we're doing like retrofuturistic Soviet
Yeah.
punk. I'm down for that. Give me some of that. Like the last time I had that aesthetic shown to me was, do you remember this old, like this from early last decade, Cradle? Do you remember
Yeah.
that Russian
Yeah.
game, Cradle? Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
I remember
That's
that.
what
Like,
it's
it had
reminding
like
me
a
of.
time mechanic, didn't it?
I don't think it had a time mechanic, but I think the story involved time travel.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, that was a. I loved the aesthetic of it. That game was janky as hell, and it was like broken to hell and back. But I loved the aesthetic it had, and I
Yeah.
would love
Yeah.
to revisit a game with that aesthetic.
Yeah. Sometimes, sometimes it's tough to give up on a game that had such a cool idea, you know? Um, but yeah, I remember this game.
Yeah, I actually played it all the way through. I was really stubborn with it. I think I consulted a walkthrough only once because I was really stubborn and like I'm gonna do this game by myself. Um, that was probably a mistake.
Yeah, I'm really interested in seeing where a lot of those types of games go. Um, there was one where it was another Russian game where I can't remember exactly what it was something to do with Tesla, and you were going like shifting through time portals and stuff like that. It felt like a little bit of like a precursor to the Titanfall campaign. There's a lot of those little weird tell a story with a shooter games, and I don't know. BioShock, of course, is probably the best example. And we are getting a new System Shock this year, aren't we? Is that
We're getting
this
it.
year, next year?
So there are two things being worked on. There's a System Shock 1 remake and an actual System Shock
That's right. Yeah.
3 that is being helmed by Warren Spector.
Okay. I don't know if I am more or less excited about this.
I think Warren Spector is one of the most thoughtful people in the world of video games. I also think he doesn't know how to run a
That's
project.
kind of what I mean. Like the odds of it getting actually released like decrease with his involvement. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Um,
Smart guy. I don't think he should be managing
yeah, I
projects.
can get you what you mean. Um, I'm just gonna read maybe like three or four more of mine and see if any strike you as something you'd be interested in. Starfield, of course. The new
Yeah, I think I could be interested in that.
the new Settlers. Um,
Okay.
Dungeons 4, Arc 2,
Not for me, but I'm glad for you.
Lord of the Rings: Return to Moria.
I hadn't heard
Yeah,
of this one.
this
What's that
is
one all
a
about?
survival game based in Lord of the Rings, so I'm already halfway on board, right? But you are the dwarves restoring Moria to its former glory. But think
Huh.
survival game in terms of like I don't know, like something like Rust type thing, right? Um,
Okay.
it looks really cool. And I of all the stuff I love Lord of the Rings, the dwarves to me are just the coolest. I don't know why, but I just like that idea and being able to, Moria is such a cool spot, and I think in the series, I want to say like the dwarves basically disappear back underground and they fix Moria at some point. But yeah, I could really, really, really get into this one if it's a survival crafting game based in Lord of the Rings around dwarves basically trying to return to their home. That's got a lot of promise for me.
For sure. I'm even imagining something kind of like grounded, obviously with a completely different tone,
Hmm.
but that kind of survival crafting thing where instead of like giant spiders, it's whatever horrible creatures live deep
Yeah,
underground.
yeah. Basically, you're trying to recover Moria, but at the same time, who knows what you're digging into. And there was a very fun game that I was.
Oh yeah, you could put digging
Yeah,
in this.
yeah, dig
It could
down.
be like a cross between. I'm thinking now of like a cross between grounded and deep
Yeah,
rock.
yeah, that's exactly what I was thinking too. There was also a game that came out not too long ago that I really enjoyed called Dwarfheim. I think it was Dwarfheim that I really enjoyed as well. So yeah, this one is kind of on my radar for something I'm very interested in. The last one I was going to mention was this one kind of feels a little bit cheap to even mention, but I think I'd be interested in Diablo 4 only if Microsoft buys out Blizzard. I think I can stomach it that way. So, um,
Yeah, I think it's gonna be. I don't think the deal's gonna close
yeah,
this year. I think it's gonna close early next year. I think it will close. I think they will get their way eventually. I think they'll give a few more concessions to both the United States and the EU. And once those concessions are made, I think the merger will go through. But it's going to be a bit of
yeah.
a
It just
battle, I
seems
think.
more palatable to support Activision, Blizzard, Microsoft than Activision, Blizzard. Just the way it is right now, you know.
They really need to dump
Yeah.
Kotick at the
Oh,
first opportunity.
I don't imagine him and Phil Spencer existing in the same place for some reason. But the other part of it is, I mean, just the fact that they haven't been union busting and have instead been allowing unions both at like Microsoft proper now and Even with the layoffs and stuff.
Like Activision's still kind of fighting it,
Yeah,
but Microsoft has signed that labor
yeah,
neutrality
yeah,
agreement, which I don't think people I, I I can't. It's impossible, I think, to overemphasize how important this is in terms of U.S. labor. Microsoft for years was famously anti-union, and they just reversed that in like one
yeah.
second for the sake of making the Activision acquisition appear more palatable to regulators. If that's what it was going to take to make unionization possible at one of the biggest tech firms in the world, fine,
Yeah,
I'll take it.
yeah. And I mean, who knows? Because I don't see Amazon ever doing the same. So um, yeah, it's kind of a weird spot right now. There's so many good potential things that can happen, but everything feels like you're just sitting there waiting and waiting and waiting. But um, Diablo 4, I'm interested in. I love Diablo. They made a lot of weird mistakes with 3 that kind of pushed me away from the game rather than into it more. But I mean, I could always come back for a 4. I don't know. I don't know if I could do it with just Activision getting paid by it though. Seems kind of scummy. I'm kind of like, I'm not I'll never buy a game by a company type person usually. But everything that's been coming out of there just doesn't seem like the kind of place I'd want to support.
For sure. I'll just rattle off the last few games that I'm interested in. Uh, it's coming out in a couple of weeks. Actually a week. Backfirewall, which is like this first-person puzzle adventure game that kind of looks tonally a bit like the Stanley Parable. I'm also a sucker for anything that's set inside a computer, so looks good. Skin Deep, which is the new game from
Yeah.
Blendo, Brendan Chung's studio. They did Gravity Bone, 30 Flights of Loving, Quadrilateral Cowboy. This they've been taking their time developing. And I just really like immersive sims. It's probably one of my favorite genres. I'm really interested to see what their take on an immersive sim is. Venba, which is a narrative adventure cooking game centered around a South Asian immigrant family, specifically South Indian. My origins are North Indian, so not the same kind of cuisine or culture, but I mean, there's some cultural overlap, right? But, the cuisine's very different. That being said, I love South Indian cuisine. So, like, anytime I get to eat dosas and sambar, I am happy as a clam. So, I'm really excited for this just because
Something
I like learning more about
yeah.
food.
There's yeah, I tried a cooking simulator game once, and I was like, is this actually teaching me to cook or not? But the answer was
It
pretty
teaches
much
you about
no.
ingredients, though,
Yeah.
right? Yeah. Another one I'm interested in is High Water.
Yeah.
It's the upcoming game from Demagogue, who made Golf Club Wasteland. It's another game set in that universe, and I love the vibes they create. So
I never played this
I'm
one,
game
but this
for
one
that.
looked really goofy and fun. Like, it's turn-based, right?
High Water or
Yeah.
Golf Club Wasteland.
High Water. It's like Waterworld, the game, right?
Sort of. I don't think it's turn-based. I think
okay.
it's a narrative adventure.
Okay.
Golf Club Wasteland is kind of like a turn-based platformer,
Okay.
if that makes any sense. Because you're like, it's a 2D golf game, but it's on like the horizontal plane. So you're kind of like head-on viewing the golf, and you're like platforming with golf shots. So that's why I call it a turn-based platformer. I'm also interested in the new Avatar game.
Oh man, there you go.
Yeah,
I could see it being
Frontiers of
good.
Pan-
I mean, I really could.
I'm just itching for a new open world
Yeah.
game. I want to play a good open world game. I want to feel good about playing an open world action adventure because I tried Just Cause 4 last
Yeah.
year, and that game was boring as hell. Like that should be you're just blowing shit up
Yeah.
all the time. That should be fun. How did they manage to make blowing shit up boring? I don't know, but like I want to play a good open world action adventure game. We know that Ubisoft is capable of making these. I love the world of Pandora. I love hanging out with freaky deaky alien life. Just make it happen, man. I want this game to be good. And finally, I am looking forward to Blue Protocol, which is the new upcoming, I guess, MMO-ish game from Bandai Namco. It's basically just like Genshin Impact, but done better and with brown people in it.
Genshin still being around feels weird. It feels like the kind of thing that would have, you know what I mean?
Like, died already. I mean, I've logged into it a couple of times. Maybe, like, have I logged into it this year? Like, I play Genshin once a month. I log in for like an hour and mess around and like advance the story a tiny bit. I'm not one of those players who's like absolutely needs to go in and do my dailies.
Like you're logging in every day to get the 1% whatever roll to whatever.
Like, I was doing that for a while. I was playing Genshin every day, and then eventually just kind of got bored of it. And that's not, I don't want that to come across as a criticism of Genshin Impact. I think there's a limit to how long a game can hold your attention.
That's what I mean. Like, it's just, I know they're always constantly putting stuff new out there. It's just, it's interesting that they haven't really talked about, like, a 2 or anything, because it's been around, what, 3 or 4 years now, huh?
Yeah. I think they're just going to keep it going for
live service,
as long as it's going to go. But I can see myself replacing Genshin entirely with Blue Protocol if Bandai Namco pulls it off, because I actually get to create my own character.
Big,
and there's more than just the palest to pale skin tone available. God, there's a big controversy over Genshin late last year because they released a new region that was kind of based around India and the Middle East.
Oh yeah, I remember you mentioning
but
that. Yeah.
They didn't change they didn't put like darker skin tones in the game, and it got kind of controversial. I'm not going to get into the whole history and complications surrounding colorism and shadism and racism in India. That's a whole complicated conversation that I don't want to unpack right now. But I think in the modern day, if you're putting out an MMO with a global audience, you can't really whiff on that stuff.
MMOs especially. I think that's the thing. People want to identify with the character that they're going to be inhabiting at that kind of level long term, you know? If you're really trying to convince me, look, we're telling this specific story about this specific person, maybe. But I think even that's even lazy. But an MMO is very hard to sell me on that.
Yeah. So I think if you're going to do that, you probably want to have, and like even throughout the world, I think it just looks more interesting to have like this diversity of representation throughout the world. And like, I think, how do I put this? I think for a while there was kind of this, in my view, somewhat unfair perception that developers in Asia just didn't get it. Like, they didn't have anyone with their ear to the ground here that would tell them, hey, you know, diversity is something that's important, and that they're really insular. And like, a lot of these games coming out of Asia, just like, they did get the memo. So it feels really weird for Genshin to not get it. And I don't think you can use the excuse that, oh, they're a Chinese developer and they don't know any better. Like, they're a global developer. They could have their ear to the ground on this. And like, Bandai Namco and Square Enix have done fine in this regard with their like globally oriented games. So like, it does feel like if you're kind of like, to give Hoyoverse a pass here feels a little bit strange to me. But I don't know. So yeah, Blue Protocol, it actually, like, it even looks great. You know me, I'm a stupid weeaboo. I love me some like good ass looking anime characters doing flashy combos and stuff. Like, that's my bread and butter. So I'm super excited for that. So before we call this podcast to a close, I thought we'd bring back one of the games we played 2 years ago when we did our first recording of the year of 2021, which was Andy Tuttle's Will This Game Get Delayed game. So credit to Andy Tuttle for coming up with this, because that was a lot of fun when we did it 2 years ago. So the way it's going to work, I'm going to name a game that's slated for 2023 or doesn't have a confirmed release year yet. You tell me the percentage chance that it comes out this year.
All right.
All right, let's start with Alan Wake. How likely do you think it comes? Alan Wake 2, sorry. How likely do you think it comes out this year?
75.
75? Yeah, I'm going with 75 as well. Arc 2.
95.
I'm gonna go with 90. Armored Core 6 Fires of Rubicon.
This one, I think I'm gonna go 60.
60? Huh. I'm gonna go 60 as well. Because I think that FromSoft has been, I think, pretty good about not delaying games, but also they'll announce things and then not reveal release dates. So if they're, I think they've officially announced it's a slate to come out this year. I think they must be pretty.
Yeah, and I think this one has more of a chance to delay than some of their other ones because they said they're not gonna make it a Souls-like, but they're gonna try to incorporate Souls-like features. And I think sometimes that works and sometimes it doesn't. It might need a little bit more time to actually pull it together.
Okay, yeah, I can see that. You've convinced me. I was going to go back up to like 70, but no, you've convinced me. 60 is good. Avatar: Frontiers of Pandora. Remember, this was slated to come out in 2022.
This is coming out, or somebody's losing a studio. I got to think this is like a 90.
I'm going to go 80 because they've said it's a fiscal year 2023, which ends in 2024.
Gotcha.
So I can see it slipping to early 2024 if they need some more time in the oven, but I don't think it's getting delayed past March 2024. Okay. It's in early access, some form of early access right now, but Baldur's Gate 3 full release, do you think it makes it this year?
Tricky. I don't. I think I'm going to give it like 40% that it leaves early access. I think people have been very enamored with the first bit of the game, but it seems like kind of lately the news has been, where's this, where's that, you talked about this, you talked about that, and I feel like there's been a little bit of a creep to it that I think they're going to keep it in the early access window until it's all 100% feature complete.
I think I can see that. I'm going to give it a 50.
Because there's really no reason to push a game out of early access anymore. It can live in there for years. It's obvious Steam doesn't care. There's a lot of games there, and I think it's already been a solid seller, right? In early access. So I don't think they're feeling the pinch to get it out the door.
Yeah, as long as it keeps generating sales, I don't think they're too worried. What will be worrying is if they run out of people who are willing to buy it in early access, and then the infusion of capital stops. Like, what do you do now?
I think it's even gone on sale in early access, which is kind of interesting. So yeah.
We'll see. Yeah, it's possible. Blue Protocol.
Man, Bandai Namco is kind of weird, huh?
Yeah. Because they are a publisher, but they're not publishing this game. They're publishing it with Amazon Games.
Oh wow,
which is weird.
This will be delayed then. This is like a 30.
30. Okay.
Amazon cannot afford another anything that makes them look worse. So I think this stays till it is 100% ready. MMOs are tough. They pushed New World out the door before it was ready, and that hurt that game incredibly. So once I think Amazon involved, I think they're going to want to be really, really good before it hits the door.
I'm going to give this a 55. Okay. I think it's more than likely that it comes out this year, but I do 100% take your point that Amazon is not going to want to sully their reputation as a publisher.
Okay.
I mean, they've clearly sullied their reputation as a developer. Like, we know Amazon can't make a game worth a damn, but as a publisher, I think they're going to want to be careful. And you're absolutely right.
That's kind of what I think too. I think they don't want to get burned again by some of the same stuff that happened.
Builders of Egypt. I don't know if you've had.
I thought this came out already, but it was just the prologue. It's still in early access, I'm assuming then, right? If it's not fully out.
I don't think it's even in early access.
Really?
Like,
I'm pretty sure it's in early access. I don't have to double check.
Is it? Builders of Egypt. Coming. No, it's not in early access.
They
You can join the playtest, but it that is
Oh,
only
I
gives
know
you
it.
like
So
a
Builders of Egypt Prologue. That's the game they
yeah.
released.
Prologue is
Okay.
out.
All right. Yeah. I mean, I remember playing the prologue. It was pretty much done. I'm surprised. So so that's interesting. So was the prologue in early access, and then they're just going to release the full game now, without putting it in early access?
I don't know what they're gonna do.
That's really weird.
Uh,
I know
it's
they've
a
announced like five of these though, right? Like five of these builders games, right?
there's got like Builders of Rome or
Yeah.
something. I don't know.
I think
I don't know what they're
yeah.
doing. Like, just give me, just like
Because
put
you're
out
throwing me
the
off 'cause I know
spiritual
I
successor to Pharaoh that I've been wanting for so
yeah.
long. Just put that out there, and then, like, in 3 or 4 years, make a Rome one,
Uh
or make, I don't
Judging
know,
by the
a
fact that
Singapore
Builders
one.
of Egypt Prologue is in early access since 2020 and that game is free to play, I think it's ready to go, or they'd be charging for it. So I'm going to say 75 on this one.
I'm gonna go with 85 because it was supposed to come out in early 2022,
Okay.
and they've kept delaying it. So let's, it's got to come out this year, right?
Sure.
All right.
Never. This
Dokevi.
game's never
Remember
coming
that?
out.
You don't think it exists?
This game was
I
announced
go
like
with.
4 years ago. This is Pearl Abyss, the Black Desert Online folks, right?
I think
Yeah,
it
this
is.
game's never coming out.
Yeah, it is a Pearl
Yeah.
Abyss game. When was it announced? Let's look on Wikipedia.
There you go.
2019.
Yeah.
2019.
No, like
I'm giving it a 20%
10.
chance.
I remember this
10.
game because it was like all when they announced it, it was like the kids looked really weird and creepy, right?
Yeah, it looked like. Yeah.
Like featureless, like little kid ghosts. Yeah, this thing's never coming out.
Yeah, okay, so you're going with
Yeah.
10 or 0. I'll go with 20. It's been a while. I
As
mean,
soon as you said the
it looks
name,
very
I
stupid.
remembered what it was, and I was like, "Oh yeah, this thing." I remember like us all watching the trailer, being like, "What is this?" And then, because Black Desert Online is basically a waifu generator, right? I mean, 90% of the people who play
Yeah.
that game play for the character creator. So you take that away, there was no gameplay in that game at all. You literally would turn your computer off and have your character walk in place overnight to level skills. So, and that was a part of the game.
Oh, the Oblivion
Yeah, yeah.
method.
They had this like button you would push that would basically like throttle the game down to the lowest graphical settings. It looked like something from like a PS2 era, like actual PS2 era, not what people say PS2. So it turned the graphics all the way down, and you could leave your computer on overnight with your character walking forwards and backwards. I thought that was a really weird way, but yeah, this game's going nowhere.
Yeah, I'm skeptical that even when it does come out, if it's going to be
Yeah.
good or not. But it also looks like my exact kind of stupid BS. Like this is the kind of nonsense I live
Yeah.
for. So I'm hoping it comes out. Grand Blue
Yeah,
Fantasy
this
Relink.
one was announced for PS4, right? I
Yeah,
knew that one.
this was announced
Yeah,
forever
this
ago.
ain't coming out either.
They finally put out a second
Oh,
trailer.
really?
It looks more or less ready. This is the game that Platinum was working on
Yeah,
until
they
they were
left.
no longer working
Yeah.
on it. And then they were like, "This was the plan all along." I don't think that was the plan all along. I think they took it away from Platinum because they're like, "What the hell are you doing?
Well,
This is not what we asked for."
Platinum's had some problems with stuff like that, right? I don't think I'm crazy there.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know. 50-50 on this one.
Yeah,
Yeah.
50-50. I give it a
Oh,
75.
okay.
I think it's coming out this year. It's been a while, but they seem confident that they're going to hit that 2023 date.
Anytime
It looks good
anytime
now.
you hit that generational midpoint, though, do you know what I mean? Where like you were announced for the 4, but you haven't really come out till the 5's already fully in. I feel like there's a lot of stuff you got to do to make that work.
I mean, if it looks better on the 5, great. It's also coming out for PC, so like if it looks good on those platforms, it's great. And then I guess PS4 owners will be left with the crappier
Yeah.
looking version of it. but I think they can, now that the new consoles are out, they can sell it on PC and PS5 footage, and then get people interested that way. But we'll see. Hollow Knight Silksong.
I think this one comes out next year, but with a pretty significant delay. So I don't know what that would equal to. Like, I think chances of delay are good, but I think this is coming out to like every platform on the planet, right?
I don't know what platforms it's even been announced. What was Hollow Knight on?
I know it was on. Okay, this one says Linux, Mac, okay, Windows, Switch, 4,
Switch,
5,
PS...
1, and Series X and S. That is a lot of asking there. Mac OS.
Hey, some people use their Macs to play games, but like
when you want your game to get out the door, right? Like,
you don't make a Mac version. Like, that's not
a Linux version.
I mean, I could see Linux more than Mac these days for gaming, especially because like, what's the Steam Deck running on? It's basically a version of Linux.
I feel like this hits like this is gonna be one of those things where it's gonna be like Windows, Switch, 5, and Series X. Like, when's the release? June. I feel like that's a doable. I wouldn't be surprised if they just straight up don't make 2 of them. And then 4 and Xbox One seems kind of odd too. I don't know. I think it's going to come out with delays. So by the rules of the game, I say like 75%.
I would normally say that it's going to get delayed for sure out of 2023, but they did show it off at that Microsoft press conference where they said everything here is coming out in the next 12 months. So I'm going to say
that's
85.
Why I'm thinking it's going to come out to the Xbox. The Xbox be like, look, you told us this is coming out, and probably Windows too. And Sony, I'm sure, is saying the same thing. But some of those other systems, and I know like they basically like the Kickstarter was what got them all these other platforms. And I don't know. I mean, I do some market research before I make a game for Mac OS. That's all I'd say.
Hey, 5 people are going to be really, really happy. All right, what's the next one on our list? Homeworld 3.
This was announced a long time ago. I know that.
Yeah.
It's gone through like 5 different studios too. Yeah.
Oh, really?
This was part.
Is Blackbird still on it? Or?
And I know THQ doesn't exist anymore. So, let's see.
I think Gearbox is publishing it now.
Gearbox doesn't give a shit about this game. Then this is like.
Yeah, it's being published by Gearbox Publishing, which is now owned by
Embracer
Group. So.
This had
Blackbird
something
Interactive
weird with a fundraiser too. So, yeah.
Did it?
This was one of the last Fig games. Remember Fig?
Oh yeah, Fig still exists.
Oh, I thought they shut that place down.
No, it's still going. I don't hear people talking about it.
But the whole idea was that you own a part of the game with Fig.
Yeah.
So
it the way it works is you can choose between a traditional crowdfunding investment, like Kickstarter, or you can choose to buy shares.
Don't you think that gets kind of weird when you got Embracer trying to get this game out the door and figure out what the hell that stuff means?
Yes. I mean, I don't know exactly what the structure is, but effectively it turns, how do I put this? It effectively turns, the game into its own... They effectively securitize the game. I don't know exactly how the investment structure works, but that's kind of held independently from the publishing company. So it's like a revenue generating asset for the publisher and for the Fig investors.
That seems complicated with through 4 different studios now. I don't.
Yeah, I don't envy the lawyers who have to work through this, but also they're probably getting paid huge bucks. So
this is the kind of thing that they're gonna make a ton of money on. So I feel like this gets pushed towards the back of all the other shit Embracer has to deal with. They got a pretty big year this year. So I'm gonna give this
Yeah.
like 30% that it comes out.
Yeah, I'm actually there. I'm going to say 35. It's scheduled for the first half of this
Oh,
year,
if it's
but
a
I don't think it
half a
makes
year,
that.
then yeah, that's getting delayed. And whenever I hear stuff like that, like you can't even give me a quarter. You don't know when that shit's coming.
Yeah, like I'm looking for a
Yeah,
month. You're not even giving me that, so sure. Let's do the
all right.
next one. Lies of P.
I've got no idea. This is the first I've heard of it. You'll have to. You have. I don't know. I'm throwing a number
The
out.
the Pinocchio Soulsborne.
Oh my god. What?
You've seen this. It's like Bloodborne but Pinocchio.
Yeah. Has any other non from Souls game done well? Because I know people
The
didn't like that
Surge
future
and
one. I know people didn't like Lords of the
no, they like the
Fallen.
Surge. They didn't like Lords of the Fallen, right? But they like the Surge. Mortal Shell was kind of
Yeah.
in the reception. Nio's the one that's been received really well.
I feel like Pinocchio just.
Pinocchio Soulsborne.
Yeah, no,
That's a thing.
I don't think the hype's there. That can wait. That could bake a little bit longer. I'm gonna give that 50%.
I'm gonna go 60. I think it comes out this year. Marvel Spider-Man 2.
100%.
Think
It's
it's coming out
got
this
it.
year, 100%.
Yeah, I think so.
I'm giving it
Okay.
90. I think it'll come
This
out.
is.
I'm pretty confident.
Weirdly, this year for Sony feels like last year for Microsoft. I think they've got to get some of this stuff out the door.
I think the only thing they really have upcoming this year is
Marvel. Yeah.
Marvel
I'm
Spider-Man
pretty
2.
sure. So if
Like,
that slips,
I can't think of anything else in their pipeline. Like Team Asabi isn't working on anything as far as I mean, they're working on something, I'm sure, but nothing they've announced. Then there's their Western studios. Whatever Ben's working on is probably not ready. The Last of Us Factions or whatever that is probably not ready. So yeah, it's got to be Insomniac.
that's why I feel like with this being like Microsoft last year, I feel like they got to get something out the door, and I think that's going to be the one. So that one I feel pretty confident on.
Metroid Prime 4.
I'm going to give you a controversial -%. I think they're going to reboot Metroid Prime 4. I think it's going to actually make negative progress this year.
I mean, it's already been rebooted
It's
once. You
gonna
think it's
happen
getting
This
rebooted
reboot
again?
happened 3 years ago, right?
Yeah, I mean, 3 years is
So it was announced in 2017.
normal time.
Got to 2020, and they said, "Nope, we're starting it over." Right?
Yeah. I mean, I think 3 years from then is a reasonable time frame for developing a game.
I mean, you would think so, but I mean, what did they have already in 2017 besides just showing it at E3, right?
Yeah, that's why I'm. Yeah, so I mean, I don't think it's
Who the
getting
hell is
rebooted
Retro
again. I think
Studios?
same folks who made the original Metroid Prime
Really?
games. Yeah. I'm going with. I agree. I don't think it's going to come out this year. I'm going 0%.
You put me down.
But I think it. I don't think it's getting rebooted. I don't think it's getting rebooted. I think it will come out in 2024. I think they'll reveal the gameplay this year. Maybe at E3, it's going to be a huge hype moment, and everyone's going to scream, and everyone's going to be like, "Nintendo won E3."
I think they're gonna announce some kind of like we went back to the drawing board. And, yeah.
That's a level of cynicism that I can't entertain. Mina the Hollower, next game from Yacht Club. Currently slated for December 2023.
Oh, that's yeah. Boy, they really shot right up against the end of that year, huh?
Yeah.
You know what? Yeah, this one's coming out. 70%.
I'm on the opposite end. I'm saying 20.
If it's delayed by a week, you'll be right.
Exactly. I'm gonna take that bet. Pal World. You've probably seen this. Remember when that trailer dropped with the?
Yeah. This is the kind of shit I have to Google to remember because this stuff is just like, yeah, this isn't for me. It's Pokemon, right? But they eat each other.
They eat each other and there are guns.
Yeah.
It's like, you know when you were like, I mean, you're a little older than me, so you didn't have this experience. But when I was, let's say, 11 years old, and I like Pokemon when I was like 7 or 8, but I'm like, I'm growing up. I'm a
Yeah.
tween. I think Pokemon should be edgy and have guns and bombs, and they should
Yeah.
swear. Like, that's what that game
Funny
is.
is,
It's like the game that 11-year-old Merv
I
would make.
probably aged out of Pokemon by like literally like 2 years, right? Like I was probably 13 when it came out, and that was like this was too kidsy for me to get into. Do you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
but yeah, I don't know that an edgy Pokemon is something that anybody wants, right? I mean, it probably
It's
comes
something
out
that the
though.
11-year-old version of me
Yeah.
wants.
Well, does it have a date attached to it, or
But
is it just 2023?
just
I'll
2023,
give
I
it
think.
60. I'll trust in Pocket Pair. You guys can do this. Don't let me down.
I'm gonna give it 30. I think it's get delayed to 2024. Payday 3.
Mm, God damn. I would love to know how much Payday 2 DLC is selling for before I answer this question, because I feel like Payday 2 has been making DLC for 15 years now, and I don't even know why they're making a Payday 3. Um, I don't know. That's 505, right? Is that the or is it Starbreeze? It's Starbreeze.
Starbreeze 505 is what is the publisher of Payday 3? Let's look this up. Payday 3.
I mean, they could.
It's Prime Matter. Prime Matter, I believe, is Tencent's one of Tencent's publishing divisions.
Yeah. I don't know. I feel like they probably have enough like leftover content from all the DLCs they crapped out that they could just stick a game out anytime they want. And that game isn't like a graphical powerhouse or anything. So, yeah, I think this one can come out. Give it 75%.
All right.
They've got an active.
Sorry, no. Prime Matter is not with Tencent. They're Plyon's publishing label. Plyon's owned by Koch Media, which is owned by Embracer Group. So it's all Embracer all the way up and down. What is Tencent's premium publishing label? It's something else. It's not Prime Matter. I'll have to look it up. I'll put it in the link dump. All right, what's the next game on our? Oh yeah, I didn't give a percentage. I think it comes out this year. I give it an 80.
We're both pretty much on that one.
All right, Perfect Dark reboot.
Oh man, I know they just stuck Crystal Dynamics on it, right?
Yeah.
Fuck. It would be kind of sneaky if this came out right at the holiday of 2023. I feel like. Yeah, I'm gonna give this 75%.
Oh wow, I'm giving this a 0. This game has had a troubled development. We haven't seen anything of it. I don't think it's coming out this. I think the initiative is kind of a mess of a studio. I don't think this is coming out until 2024.
Well, they stuck Crystal Dynamics on it 2 years ago, so you're thinking they're gonna need 3 years with 2 studios on it? Oof.
Yeah. I think it's a mess.
It's just a reboot, though, right? I mean, they're pretty much taking the same. It's all there.
I mean, it's a new game entirely. It's not like they're remaking the first one.
Yeah, I think it still comes out.
Yeah, not a remake.
It's coming out. This is the one. They're going to sneak it in at the deadline, like right at holiday.
Like December 31st, you're playing as Joanna Dark again?
You're going to go get the Perfect Dark reboot.
I mean, I would love that. If that happened, I would scream with happiness.
What else is the initiative doing, though? Secret shit?
Screwing up office politics. I don't know. All right, Pikmin 4.
Man. This was announced 4 years ago?
I don't know how long ago it was announced. I'm not a Pikmin fan. I don't know.
This is a long time ago. 2015 was in development. Miyamoto said in 2016 it was still in development at a lower priority. 2017, he reassured Eurogamer said the game was still progressing.
I don't think it's progressing. I think Miyamoto is too busy opening theme parks to work on his funky little Pikmin
There's no way
dudes.
this comes out. It's like a 20%.
I'm giving it a 10. I mean, I do think it's in development.
Sure.
I think,
but when you have,
I think Nintendo sincerely wants to put this out, but I'm starting to think this is a Switch 2 game, not a Switch 1 game.
I mean, by this point, yeah. I don't even think Nintendo really likes Pikmin as much as the fans like Pikmin, honestly.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I mean, it is a niche franchise. I don't think it's ever sold super duper
Yeah.
well, but I also think it's a good idea for Nintendo to keep
Hmm.
having, because like, where else are you gonna get like I guess Nintendo's take on an RTS?
Yeah, it's eesh, I don't know.
But I don't know, like maybe Tinykin has eaten their
Yeah,
lunch.
yeah,
What do
I
I
don't
know?
know. And like it seems like there's plenty of games out there.
Yeah, I mean, I'm surprised that RTSs never took off more on the Switch because it is kind of the perfect platform for them. Like with the touch screen, you can take it on the go. I don't know why it never took off, but I guess it's not really the platform that RTS aficionados
Yeah,
are
exactly. It's
playing
kind of
on.
like trying to,
Yeah,
square peg round hole the whole concept of the game. But and also I think part of what made Pikmin work a lot was the console it was on. Switch I don't think is going to have that, but yeah.
that's fair. Uh, Pragmata, that Capcom
Yeah.
game we don't know anything
Capcom,
about.
huh? They got anything else this year?
Resident Evil 4 remake.
Yeah, remakes. Now this one, sometimes I gotta look up like when they were announced. That's
Oh, Street
Oh,
Fighter
okay. Well, yeah,
6,
this
of
is a
course.
backburner then. This looks goofy. I remember that. Originally released for 2022, but later changed to 2023. Okay, it's only PS5, Series X, and Windows. That makes me see like that's what I'm looking for. That makes me a little more confident, right? Uh,
Yeah, it's a next gen game. They're developing it for next gen consoles. They don't have to worry about like when you have a backpack and you're just trying to
yeah,
shove everything into
yeah,
it and you don't want to like take a second bag in
yeah.
hand. They don't have to do that.
I think this comes out. I'm gonna guess like 70.
I'm going 80. I think they'll put it out. I don't know what the game
Yeah, no,
is. They haven't
I
told
think they
us.
only said it's like a creepy sci-fi Kojima-esque type thing. So I remember them announcing it, but it just like I remember the girl wearing like a knee-length coat. That's why I remembered it. So,
That's the only
yeah.
thing I remember about it also. I don't know what this game is. I don't know what you do in it, but I'm intrigued.
Okay,
Redfall.
this one I've got an interesting thinking on. Okay, I think this releases in like a half, right? Like I don't know whether it's like a campaign or a multiplayer, but I think something comes out for this game, right? They've said it's gonna have co-op. Is that right?
Yeah, it's like a co-op tactical shooter immersive. I don't really know what
Yeah,
they're doing with it.
yeah. I feel like something comes out for this because I remember there. Yeah, I think there's gonna be like a single player and like a co-op multiplayer mode, but I don't remember if it's like a versus or if it's like async like Left 4 Dead was. I bet you they get out the single player this year, and I think they probably aren't ready for the multiplayer yet.
I think, I think that the whole thing is kind of designed around four-player
Hmm.
co-op. Like you probably can go with solo. It's just not designed for it. So I do agree that it's going to get a lot of post-launch support, including probably putting in content that they cut for the main
Yeah,
release.
because this is
But
Dishonored
I
team,
think it's
right?
going to be I not the okay, not exactly the Dishonored team because the first Dishonored was a collaboration between Arcane Austin and Arcane Lyon.
Hmm.
I think the second Dishonored was only Arcane Lyon. I believe this is the Arcane. I believe this is the Prey
Oh,
people
okay.
because Arcane Austin.
Well, I mean, same
Yeah.
same thing kind of holds true though for both of them. Single player shootery campaigns, right? Not so much with the multiplayer stuff, right?
Yeah, but again, this is meant to be played kind of co-op. Like that's what it's being billed
Is
as.
there a
I don't
campaign
think they're
to it
going to
though?
release. There is a campaign that can be, but I think the idea is that's kind of like you can play it co-op, you can play it single player.
Okay.
Think of it kind of like Grounded,
Okay, so
right?
it's a
Which you can
co-op
play single player.
multiplayer, not a competitive. Okay.
Yeah, yeah. There's nothing
Yeah, I
competitive
could.
about it.
Well, I mean, that's kind of how they broke up Master Chief. They're not releasing, well, they released the online co-op now, but there's no couch co-op. I could see the single player hitting and then them working on the co-op from there.
Okay, I don't think they're gonna. I think they really want this co-op out
Think
the
so?
door.
It,
Uh,
that's probably a
yeah.
delay if they want the co-op out the door. If they just release the single player, I
Okay.
think I don't know, I'll give it 50-50.
You have 50-50. I think they'll get it out. I think they've said I think they want it out the first half of this year. I don't think it's coming out till the second half of the year. So I think it'll get delayed, but I think it'll come out this year. So I'm giving this an 85.
Okay. So yeah, my 50-50 is more that I don't think the whole thing comes out, so we'll see.
Yeah, I think what's going to happen is they're going to release like almost kind of half the game, like the first half of the game, and then they're going to like put out the second half later. I can see that happening. Like it'll be a free campaign update. Kind of like what, remember what Star Wars Battlefront 2 did with the single player campaign?
People wanted a campaign.
I can see that happening.
I can see that.
Yeah. She Dreams Elsewhere.
I only remember this announcement. I can't believe this isn't out already. This is like an indie Undertales looking thing, right?
Yeah.
How is this not
It's like
out?
a cross between Undertale.
This was announced a long time ago, right?
Yeah, tiny team developing it. It's like only like 3 or 4 people, I think. So it's like a cross between, I guess, Undertale and Omori.
It was announced in 2018.
Oh wow, that's longer ago than I thought.
Yeesh. It won some kind of award in 2018, so I'm guessing that was. I mean, it feels like this could come out any time. This looks like a full ass game from these pictures. What's the delay on it?
I have no idea.
Surreal adventure RPG for December 2023. Man, they're cutting it up to that last second, huh?
Yeah.
50-50. I don't have a.
I'm going 45
I
on
don't have
this.
a good feel either way, but I'm watching this gameplay video. It's all there. It's not. It's PC only.
Yeah, it looks like they know what they're doing, but
drives my eyeballs
who knows?
crazy, but sure, if that's your style.
45%. That's what I'm going to say. Just because it's in December and it can just get pushed over the edge pretty
this
easy.
could be like one of those things where like the studio falls apart, they just all hate each other or something, you know? Like.
I mean, they've worked together for 6 years, so, but you never know. All right, Stalker 2: Heart of Chernobyl.
Oh boy. Comes out, I think, but let me see when the release date is.
I didn't pick anything with a firm release date announced.
Well, like sometimes if they like, you know what I mean, if they're saying December 2023, this was just 2023, huh?
Yeah.
Now, this studio is based in Kiev, right? So
I think they were. I don't know where they're working from now.
This is a Game Pass game, so yeah, this is going to come out this year. I'm gonna get like 75. I think this just needs money, and I think Microsoft will pay if they need to get this out on Xbox for Game Pass, no matter what. Yeah, I think this one I'm gonna give this like. Plus, like it's your Ukrainian game dev. If you can get this out in middle of war, that'd be kind of like a big, big moment for you. So I'm gonna give this like 80%.
Oh wow. I think it'll get delayed. I'm going 30.
Really? All right. That's the first one we really split on, I think.
We were really split on. Dark as well.
And
yeah.
My negative 10% one.
I don't think that's a split so much as disagreeing about how numbers work.
I'm sending it back.
Probabilities have to lie between 0 and 1.
Yeah.
Let's be real on how numbers work for a second.
I think if they announce they're going to send it back into the oven, I think that's how I win. So.
All right, Starfield.
This is an interesting one. This is Q1 still, I think.
Is it Q1? All I know is that's 2023.
Yeah.
Because I know it got delayed. I think they wanted it out
a lot
earlier in 2023.
Yeah.
They have to drop that 11/11 release date, which they really wanted.
This is tough. I think it's ready. I mean, they've been showing so many things from it lately, and like long, in-depth type things. And, I think the other thing about Bethesda is they're okay with the community and modders fixing stuff too, I think they would love to shake that, like we released, bad games, but I also think they wouldn't mind if it wasn't 100%.
I think Microsoft, now that they're in charge of Bethesda, is eager to shake that image off Bethesda. Like, I don't think this game can come in hot.
I mean, especially not if it's being sold as a console type game. You know what I mean? When I think the
Yeah.
other games were primarily PC, and I think you get a little bit more leeway with that. I don't see a way this could be delayed unless it's just really, really, really not ready, though. I think they push it out of the door at an 80% no matter what. I don't know if it gets delayed, but I still think it comes out next year. I could see it being delayed out of Q1 easy, but I think it comes out next year. So I'm gonna give it like 85.
But next year, you mean this year?
Yeah, this year. I don't think it gets delayed out of this year. I think it might get delayed out of Q1 or Q2, and they might get that 11/11 back. But I don't see a way this doesn't come out this year.
All right, you're giving this an 80. Or did you say 80 or 85? Sorry. 85. Yeah, I'm with you. I think this will come out this year. I think, I'll go 85 as well. I think they'll push it. I think it'll come out towards the end of the year. I don't think it's going to be ready for the first half of the year, but I also don't think they can really afford to delay it too much longer. I think they want those holiday sales.
I do too.
So I'm thinking late November, early December.
Game Pass on holiday, and I think this is a big year for Microsoft. If they can hit on 3 or 4 of these for holiday, with the only thing Sony having is Spider-Man, man, that might be a jump.
Yeah. Synduality.
This one comes out 100%, I think. Yeah, because it's got the TV show. I think you can't release the TV show and not the game, or it falls apart.
Is the anime slated for this year? Oh. Okay, yeah. Then I'm going 95.
I mean, I think you got to get it out the door, right? Like, if you don't, and people watch the show, it's probably gonna give away stuff from the game, and people are like, "Who cares?" Or the show is bad, and now people don't get the game, or vice versa, right? Last time I saw this happen though was what was it? That Defiance,
Oh yeah,
and people like the show. The show, I mean, for a sci-fi run, it had a pretty successful run. The game was so, and they kind of whitewashed some of the what you do in the game happens in the show. That really didn't happen, but yeah, I don't know. I think if you got a show coming out on Disney Plus, the House of Mouse is making sure you're not missing. You're not missing shit. That's coming out.
Interesting. Because the last Japanese game I think did this was Scarlet Nexus, where the anime came out around the same time as the video game. And yeah, they really had to hit that release date. So yeah, if they have, I didn't know that there was a firm release date announced for the show. So if the show is going to hit Disney Plus, and I just looked it up, Tokyo TV this year, then yeah, it has to come out this year.
This was Disney Plus's dipping its toe into anime. I don't know that there's a lot of anime on Disney Plus, and
their big one last year was Summertime Rendering, and then they had Star Wars Visions the year
that
prior.
Was Star Wars, but I mean, I don't know that they've got other people making them anime. So, I mean, I could see, if you had a deal with Disney, you don't fuck that up. Out.
Yeah, because then Goofy's gonna show up at your house with a baseball bat and break your kneecaps. All right, what is the next one I have on the list? Tron Identity.
Does the movie flop or not?
The Tron 3 with Jared Leto?
Yeah, the new Tron movie.
I think this comes out before the new Tron movie.
Oh, does it? What about there's like a movie, a TV series, and then I guess this is the game?
Yeah, I don't think this is going to be linked to the new movie at all.
Oh, really? Okay. What about the TV series?
Yeah, I think it's a TV series. I haven't kept up with Tron.
Yeah, Tron Uprising. It's a animated series. Oh, I guess it already came out.
Yeah, that's already out. Okay, okay, that's already out. I thought you were talking about a new series.
Tron. No, nothing. Just this.
Just this and the Jared Leto movie.
Oh, the Jared Leto movie. That's it. Okay, yeah, that's what I was thinking of.
Yeah, I don't think this has anything to do with the Jared Leto movie. I don't want it to have anything to do with the Jared Leto movie. Yeah. Why did Jared Leto just stick to singing his terrible rock songs with 30 Seconds to Mars?
Oh, okay. Production starting in August 2023. Yeah,
Oh
he is.
Lord, yeah.
He's a piece of work. Yeah, it's a visual novel. It'll come out. You have like 80.
Yeah, I'm going
Yeah,
90. Yeah,
visual
I
novels. I
think
mean,
it'll
at
come
some
out.
point, nobody's gonna know if you didn't put in, you know, a couple of things. You just write around it.
Exactly. I mean, and Bethel Games have proven they can make
Yeah,
these kinds of games pretty quickly, with Subsurface Circular and Quarantine Circular, both great games. So
yeah, I can
yeah,
see this one hit.
I think
Yeah.
they could do it. Warhammer
Oh, you
40k
better come
Space
out.
Marine 2.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't have a good feel for Saber Interactive. I don't really know what they do or don't make. Um, Let me see. Yeah, they're not. They're kind of like one of those like weird, like make a ton of games that you never heard of, but like do like side work on it mostly. Let's see, World War Z
Yeah.
that came out, was pretty good. Um, they did the Nintendo Switch and Stadia versions. Oh, the Evil Dead game, that was pretty solid. Um,
I have no frame of reference for this, so I'm just going to say
yeah, that's what I'm looking
70%.
at too. I'm just kind of like, they're doing a lot of like their whole like slate for 2023 is like reboots and remasters. They've got Kingdom Come
Uh-huh.
Deliverance for the Switch. We got a Descent game.
They're putting that on the
Yeah.
Switch? That's weird,
Star
man.
Wars Knights of the Old Republic remake. That's not ever going to come out. A Painkiller title, and then Space Marine 2.
Oh, that is 100%
Yeah.
getting canceled.
Um,
That Kodo
this feels like
remake
the only
is
game they have
dead.
that's going to come out, so I'm going to give this like 75. All the rest of this sounds like something like somebody wrote down in like a fever dream. Hey, let's make Kingdom Come Deliverance for Nintendo Switch. Sure, yeah, get that out.
Like, I'm all for porting games to Switch, but
That game was
come
janky
on.
on like a high-end PC. Just being honest. Like,
Nobody wants that on Switch. Nobody's like, I want to play a
a
hardcore
historical
medieval
sim.
simulator with no magic while I lie in bed. Nobody's
Yeah,
thinking that. Nobody has ever had that
yeah.
thought.
Seeing this list makes me more sure this is going to come out because all the rest of the stuff doesn't look like it ever will. So it's like 75.
All right. Yeah.
Oh,
I can see that.
this last one hurts.
Last last one on the list. The Wolf
I
Among Us
have
2.
no idea. Ad hoc studio is the weirdest concept on the planet to me, right? Like how does it exist? It seems like it'd be illegal, right? It seems like everybody who knew what they were doing left to go to other studios as well, right?
Yeah.
Campo Santo, and what was the other one?
Well, Campo Santo
Like
was
half the
they
Telltale
made that a
guys,
long
right?
time ago.
Oh, Night School Studio.
Oh, Night School had
Yeah,
former Telltale people
yeah.
in it? Yeah.
Uh,
There Oxenfree 2 is supposed to come out
yeah.
this year.
I have
I think that actually might get delayed again.
I have no idea about this one. Its trailer came out about a year ago,
Yeah, we haven't seen any real gameplay footage. It's just been like that
and they're
teaser.
releasing it episodically. Okay, so this 100% has at least one episode out by the end of the year. I'll put it that way.
Okay, so you're going with 100?
100% that at least one episode is out by the end of the year. It looks awful. It looks like they really crapped up the art on it.
What are you looking at right now? Can
Yeah,
you
yeah,
post in
yeah.
the chat? I want to see what this looks like because I'm just
Yeah,
curious.
that's where I'm at on it too. It's kind of like a rough looking. It looks like a fan project is how I'd describe it.
Fan project.
There's like if you
Okay,
go about
let's look
halfway
at this
all
art.
all the way to the end of the article, you'll see some of it. Like I don't know, it's too clean. Like one of the things about that Wolf Among Us is it really had that comic booky style, you know. A lot of rough textures, a lot of stuff that wasn't filled in or crosshatched instead of colored in type stuff, you know. This just looks too clean. It looks like somebody put a filter on a picture to me, you know. They got the full trailer
Yeah,
in there too, so I don't know. I mean, maybe this comes out. I don't know.
yeah, I'm looking at this right now. It does not look really. It looks a bit better in motion,
Yeah,
I
probably.
think.
But
And they've got some of that
yeah,
grime that's missing from the screenshots. Okay, I can see how this looks good in motion. I'm less skeptical now. But yeah, you're right. Those screenshots do not flatter the game. They look so generic. It's
like
rare
yeah,
that
flat
something
generic.
looks
Yeah, that's
better.
exactly how I describe it. like what I
It's
said, fan
so
made.
rare that something looks better in motion than it looks in the screenshots. Usually it's the other way around. They bullshot the screenshots and then
Yeah.
the trailer looks like garbage, but it's the other way around now.
Um, I got no good feel because the other thing is like the legality of this. It doesn't seem like it's legal that this is getting made, right? Like, I guess they have the rights. Like,
They do.
okay, so if they have the rights, yeah, 100% that one episode is out by the end of the year. I think it's
I think that counts
yeah,
as released.
yeah.
Oh, I don't think this. I don't think an episode is coming out this year. I think it's getting delayed again. I'm going 30.
What am I like 70? We got some.
Well, we said
Oh yeah,
100% that
100% that
at least
something
an
comes
episode.
out this year. Yeah.
I'm at 30. I don't. I think it's getting delayed again, but I'm pessimistic as hell.
Man, yeah, we got some good differences to figure out at the end of the year. That's for sure.
I mean, I'm a very pessimistic person by nature. I don't think anything's gonna
I think
come
this is
out
the
well.
year. Weirdly, this is a decent year to delay stuff if you're most of these studios, right? Like, I feel like there's not the stuff that you don't want to push too much into next year to see, you know what I mean, like some kind of big war for whatever. But yeah, I don't know. I kind of feel like this is a year where if you're going to delay something, do it.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of, especially double A games, kind of scheduled for this year. We have that big double A
Yeah.
pileup in February with Wanted Dead, Atomic Heart. I don't know if Atomic Heart would you consider that triple A, but like, not like the big games.
So
So you got
what's
Wanted
kind of
Dead,
weird
Atomic Heart. What's Scars Above.
is
Yeah,
is
so
like
go ahead.
Microsoft and Sony are so thin sometimes. Like every now and then they're so thin sometimes that they have to make double A or double A or even lower feel like triple A, right? Like even if it's not truly a triple A type game, it doesn't matter. They've got to get the game out, right? It's kind of weird. Like
Yeah.
you've got to hype a game that probably normally you're just like, okay, here comes just a game to play.
Here comes
Yeah,
Pentiment.
exactly. Now it's like, no, go out there and sell Pentiment. No, you can't sell Pentiment, right? Um, yeah, I don't know. I get the feeling like that they've kind of had to do that based on the release schedule a little bit more than the actual games themselves.
I mean, I just think Sony doesn't have that
Yeah,
double A, at least first party. It's not a thing they do
yeah,
anymore.
and it's
Which I think that works to their
I think you're right,
disadvantage.
and I think when Xbox has doubled and tripled into it, sometimes I think that is a disadvantage. I don't think there's any way around it when you don't have. If everything is on the two or three big name studios doing something every 2 or 3 years, I mean, just math wise, it doesn't work out. You know what I mean? Like you're gonna have years where nothing comes out. So, um,
I mean, that being said, Microsoft's strategy has not
yeah,
yet
you're
borne
right,
fruit
and I'm.
because, like, they just have not had those
But you wonder.
AAA prestige games. Which I mean, like, I gotta like say for my own preferences, I don't care for Microsoft to
Yeah,
put those out. I'd rather they focus on double A, but I'm also speaking just for my own
sure.
preferences. Sony's strategy has been immensely
And
successful
I'm
thus
kind of
far.
the same way. I wonder if my big question is if PS5 didn't jump to the gigantic lead that they did, right? Um, what would this gen look like if kind of the console launches all went pretty much the same, you know? And we were just looking at who's selling what versus who. We didn't have all those shortages. We didn't have that all their stuff. I don't know. I'm kind of I'm kind of torn. I think they've got a better strategy long term, 100%. I don't think anybody would argue with that, but it's not bearing out yet. But how patient are they going to be? You know what I mean? No clue.
I mean, to borrow an expression from economics, in the long run,
Yeah.
we're all dead. So, like, it's at some point they have to put something out. Like they have to. Phil Spencer has to prove that he can shepherd a gaming division that puts out big core titles at a regular cadence. I don't think it needs to be more than a couple of those titles a year, but they need to come
Yeah.
out. And like Starfield needs to come out this year. I'm not sure it will, but it needs to.
Yeah. Yeah. That's kind of where this strategy for both Microsoft and Sony hits kind of a weird spot is like some of these games just have to come out. Like you have to get out of the door. There's no more time to bake it. They have to.
Yeah, like Marvel
Yeah,
Spider-Man 2 has to come
yeah,
out this year. I like, and I'm not sure I necessarily want it to come out this year, but it
yep,
has to. And that's like, yeah, there are always going to be deadlines imposed by publishers or whoever's fronting you the money. I get that games have to come out on deadlines, but when you're also engaged in this level of competition with another platform
right.
holder, once the narrative becomes this console isn't putting out games regardless of what the third party support looks like, and that third party support might be fantastic, once that narrative solidifies and games media folks start pushing it, like it starts to take on a life of its own.
Yeah, I mean it. It's so weird to have this problem when it felt like 2 years ago, 3 years ago, we had the opposite problem before COVID. It was like everybody's coming out with 50 things. I only want to play 5 of them. Now it's like everybody's coming out with 5 things. I only want to play one of them. It's weird, right?
I, yeah, and again, like from my perspective, that's still just a media narrative. Like I've made a list of 100 games that I want to play this year, and
Maybe I
I'm
shouldn't
not
say
going to
want
end
to
up playing
play, but
most of them.
want to get hyped about. Like the hype isn't like the game. That's why it feels like these things just kind of come out of from under the radar. It's like, yeah, we didn't have a chance to be hyped about it because there was no media cycle because nobody even knew if it was going to be any good, right?
Yeah, that's fair. I mean, I don't necessarily think that hype is necessary for me to get to enjoy a game in the end, but there's definitely kind of something, I guess, that's missing from the culture or the zeitgeist when there's no kind of collective excitement for something.
Yeah,
You know
yeah.
what I mean?
And you got no E3 really to push it. You got it's just been a weird couple years. Um, I don't know. I really, 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 really would like to just see somebody announce, just say, look, here's like not even a not even a 1 year strategy like Microsoft did where everything is coming out by next year, right? I would like to somebody say, here's what the next 3 or 4 years look like, but I don't think they would ever do that because they don't want to lock in either. It's really weird. Um,
It's dangerous to
yeah,
lock in
yeah,
that much. Things get delayed all the
yeah, or
time.
canceled.
There's no one who'll commit to that much
Right,
up
yeah.
front. Not a single company in the world.
But if you're really curious to see like what's coming down the pipe, that's the way to do it. But nobody's gonna do it, so you're just kind of, it's get hyped quick. Then see you later, right? Um,
I mean, companies used
yeah,
to do that. They've shifted more towards this short announcement cycle, this short publicity cycle. I think it's kind of worked for the best because then we don't have the time to construct a game in our
yeah,
heads and then be disappointed when the game that's released doesn't match the
that's
game in our
really
heads.
true. That's really true.
Look at what happened with No Man's Sky. That game, I mean, now it matches the game in people's heads, but that's several years after it came out and was terrible at
Yeah,
release. Right? And most games don't get the chance to become that game. Most games they get a couple of patches if you're lucky, and then it's sayonara while the devs move on to the next
yeah.
project.
It's especially tough for shooters. The lifespan for a shooter now is, I mean, it's down to months. It used to be you'd get a year or so to get it right, but not anymore. I mean, that thing ain't ready out the gate. Nobody's coming back to it. You know?
Yeah, look what happened to Halo
Yeah,
Infinite. It
yeah.
was so well
Battlefield
received and
2042.
warmly
I
received
mean,
at
it's
launch.
it's a dead
Yeah.
game now. I mean, lots of these shooters, and I mean, what's weird is even Call of Duty is doing it to themselves, right?
Oh yeah, they
Yeah,
cannibalize themselves all the
yeah,
time. And like I don't know how you make that balance between cannibalizing yourself versus getting people to shell out that 80 or $90 Canadian every year to buy the
yeah,
game.
yeah, and
Are
they know the trick. They're onto you, you know.
I mean, they know they know someone's gonna shell out. Are they gonna get enough people shelling out every year? I mean, it's been working
Yeah,
out so far, but
I mean, inflation changes everything, though. I mean, just look at all these little markets that used to, you know what I mean? This is the big future, and money starts getting tight, and I mean, you're choosing between eggs and Call of Duty.
yeah, I mean, think about the fact that I was saying 80 or 90, right? It used to be that games were $80 Canadian. Now we see Forspoken trying to charge me $93.50 to play it. I'm like, I'm not going to pay $100 after tax to play your freaking video game, man. Like,
right now is tough. You guys and Australians are really feeling it. I'll tell you that. When I'm seeing some of the prices.
I mean, the thing is though, like here's the part that really gets me. Average inflation has been lower in Canada than the States, but Canada's the country that's getting the price hikes. Like that to me is
gouging.
That to me is bizarre. It's price gouging. Like, and like if you even look at exchange rates, $70 should not be $93.50 Canadian.
That's
like it should be just above 9.
So I guess there's not expecting big hype sales for any type of new games coming out that we were talking about earlier.
Like like now you wonder why I play indies all the time. It's because it's way cheaper. Why am I borrowing games from the library?
No, I mean, it makes sense. I mean, it's just so hard when you start to see like the prices go up and up and up and up and up, and then it doesn't really make sense that it doesn't make sense to go in line with inflation, and people are having to choose between things all the time. And if you're making your games more expensive, I'm not spending. Man, I don't even know what I would spend on Forspoken, but it ain't $100. I'll tell you that. That game's gonna be $20 in 6 months. You have to experience it right now? No, right?
No, I'm gonna wait until they patch it so that it runs properly off a regular ass hard drive. I'm sorry, but you shouldn't need an NVMe SSD to play a video game right now.
I don't know.
Like you're telling, like I have a standard SATA SSD, which is like way faster than your typical plate-based hard drive, right? But apparently that's not good enough for Forspoken.
Man, I was looking at like they're selling like a collector's edition of Forspoken in Australia. It's cost. Let me see if I can find this. It costs $153. That's a lot of money.
Why would you buy it? Like, who's buying a collector's edition for an unproven franchise?
I don't know. And it's a mini art book digital download, mini soundtrack digital download, and the prequel story DLC that I'm guessing you can probably buy separate, and it's not going to be $60, right?
Yeah. So wait, do they have does it come with any? Is this just digital deluxe, or does it come with any physical goodies?
I don't see anything physical in this. It says a deluxe edition is available for $94.99 US, £89, or 152 Australian. Includes the pre-order content and additional content, including a digital mini art book and mini soundtrack, and a rare resource kit, which I'm guessing is some in-game bullshit, right?
Like, I would not I used to live in the States. I would not pay $95 for all of that.
Art books are unless you're
I love art books, but give me a physical art book that'll shell out for that. If you're just charging me $30 for a PDF, get bent.
Have an art style that I'm all into. Like I think the last art book I bought was Darksiders, and I would have bought that if it was just a comic, But yeah, I want the art style to be there before. I haven't seen anything from Forspoken that's like, oh wow, I can't wait to remember all these iconic moments with Cuff.
Phrase iconic sneakers. Exactly, yeah. Maybe they should sell those.
I don't know. I mean, I don't want this game to flop, but I can definitely see Square being like, well, this didn't meet our sales expectations. And everybody's like, yeah, no shit. Look what you were selling it for. And Gary Whitta wrote this. I like him a lot. I'm sure the writing's okay, but
yeah.
What are you guys doing, man? They're selling this for so much money. It's, Anyway.
That's what games are going to cost these days, and I think it's only going to get worse, unfortunately. But this is the reality we live in.
If your test case was for $100 game, would this be your one, or would you wait for Spider-Man?
I mean, neither. but that's my own preferences, right? So if you're telling me, okay, if Nintendo were to come out tomorrow and say Astral Chain 2 is our $100 game, and Merve, we know you're an incorrigible weeaboo, who's like gonna feed at this trough like a dirty little
Yeah.
pig, I'd be like, yeah, I'm a dirty little pig. Give me that right now. $100 down. I'm gonna eat that milk and bread. Like that's
That
what
would be
I
so
want.
funny if they were like, look, one game a year is going to be $100. That's like, you've got to guess which one it's going to be. Is it one you like? Maybe. Is it one you don't like? Who knows? You're going to find out, right? I think that'd be hilarious to do, honestly.
Like just like spin the
Yeah,
roulette wheel
exactly.
on whichever game it lands on. It's like that's the expensive game this year. Like I don't know. Sorry if you're like a Starfield fan. It's $100 this time around.
That would be so
But
funny.
like that game's gonna be.
Yeah, but yeah, I can see that. See, Starfield would be one that would make sense, But if they were like Redfall's the $100 game, people are like, oh, gross, no thanks. I'm not gonna take a chance. And that's basically what they're doing with this game with Forspoken, right? Like, it's a brand new IP and the price is ridiculous. So I guess we'll see what happens.
You really gotta ease people
Yeah,
into it. You really gotta be like,
and the demo being as bad as it was, if anything, hurt it.
yeah, people could not stop memeing about how much the stupid cuff
Yeah,
talked.
yeah,
Like, I don't know. I don't want to. How do I put this? I think we've gone like kind of overcorrected, and how negatively we tend to receive, I guess, quippy things. You can think of it kind of like a backlash against the Whedonization of our genre pop culture. I totally get there need to be a backlash, and like Joss Whedon is not a
yeah,
good person, so like I kind of get where that's coming from, but at the same time, like the mere fact that someone is quipping is not necessarily a bad thing.
yeah.
It's just like it's the degree of it, it's the excessiveness, it's the like corniness of what they're saying that I think people are responding negatively to. So I don't know, maybe in the actual game, once you get further into it, you're like, yeah, this is dope. I really like chatting with my
Yeah.
cuff. But what they've shown off so far does not seem like something that would
we
appeal
talk
to
about it a
me.
lot. That's a very fine line to walk between like annoying and cool when it comes to a game companion that talks to you all the time, right? Like, and I think
Yeah.
even like from a lot of people who played Ragnarok even said like the head eventually crosses that line, right? You're eventually like, all right, shut up. I can figure out this puzzle. I don't need you for this, right? So I mean, I think even the best games have trouble balancing that. Zeldas have had trouble doing that too, right?
Oh, like
Yeah,
Fee or whatever.
yeah. So I think that's a tough spot to be in where you're sitting there.
If anything, I think Zelda's kind of overcorrected from that. Breath of the Wild doesn't explain jack to you. It's just like, hey, you go
Yeah.
figure it out. You die, too bad. You're gonna die again and again and again. I'm like, I don't know why I had to Dark Souls this up, but okay, I guess this is what we're doing in Zelda
Yeah.
now.
That's so surprising though, because I mean, like, I would if I mean, I'm not a game developer or anything, but I would steer so far away from any kind of helper that's constantly talking to you. I just feel like the odds of screwing it up are too high, you know?
Oh, for sure. Yeah, I don't want to be I don't want to be sitting there like listening to that. And especially someone who enjoys
Yes.
puzzles, I don't want someone like screaming the
Yeah.
solution into my ear because it makes me feel
Yeah.
stupid. It's like, why did you figure this out yet? I'm like, I don't know, because I'm eating a sandwich while I'm playing a game.
The
Shut
average player
up.
gets this in 15 minutes. You're on 45. Yeah.
Like I think you get away with that in, like a comedy
Yeah.
game, right? Like, wow, you're so stupid, player. Why are you doing? I'm like practically like, I don't know. I don't want to go down that road, but you know where I'm
Yeah.
going with this. Like, it's it's a tough balance to strike. I understand why they put in that helper stuff in there. I'm sure their player metrics show that this stuff really works, but also stop insulting my intelligence.
Yeah.
Like, I can figure
Yeah.
this out.
And,
Let
and
me figure it out.
it's very rare that like how are you going to write that? You either tell me the answer or you make fun of me for not figuring out the answer. That's not fun. That's like I'm sitting here trying to figure it out.
I I really appreciate optional hint systems that let you kind of dole out the hints at your own pace. Like Return to Monkey Island did that last year. I didn't play the game, but everyone praises that game's hint system. Because it goes from like giving you a tiny little nudge to practically giving you the answer. And it goes in like gradations. If every game could kind of add that kind of hint system in, I think that would do wonders for both player enjoyment and accessibility.
Yeah. I think that's true. And you walk a line, and it works or it doesn't. But if this is a very first, game out for you, and nobody has experienced this before, oh boy, yeah. I would be really upset if I was Square that this was the one. I don't know, unless it was Square. I don't know who decided this was the $100 game. Was it Square or was it Sony?
Probably.
What do you think?
I'm gonna guess Square because it's also coming to PC.
Okay. What's it on PC? 100 still?
It's still it's $93.50 for a digital download.
Man,
that's why I'm annoyed.
What?
Like I don't want to go pay. Like let me make sure I'm not making this price up. So let me search Forspoken Epic Game Store.
Yeah, $70 on Steam.
So it's $93.49 Canadian. Yeah,
I don't understand. And after we talked about the specs,
so once you add HSTs, that's what's $93.49 times 1.13. It's gonna be $105.64 with tax.
Oh man.
I'm not paying that much for a video game. I have so many other video games in my backlog.
That's if you wait for a sale, that's probably like 5 or 6 games you actually want to play, not just taking a chance on whether you will or won't like it.
Like I don't need to buy more games. I have so many games. If you like, we all have such big backlogs. Epic gives us a new game for free every week. Like you can't compete with free at these prices.
Hey, they're not giving away bad games either. They're giving away games I want to play all the time. It's really interesting. I don't know where this goes, right? And I think nobody really does. I think that the problem is going to be some studio is going to be the one that says, well, we couldn't sell our game for what you told us to sell it for, basically, right? Like,
I think that's going to be this game because, like,
well, this wouldn't have sold for a lot of reasons. I think. I mean, at least on PC, those specs are out of control. Like, that's
Yeah, I don't think this game is going to be well optimized. But like, even from say, even just as a PlayStation game, I think you can hit that $70 mark, and it's not gonna annoy people that much. But like up here in Canada, once you cross that 3-digit mark, you've lost people.
Yeah.
Like you were gonna lose people when they see that, like when they do the math in their heads, they're like, "This is gonna be over $100 with tax." You get that extra digit in there. That's gonna have a psychological effect where people are like, "This is too much."
And $10 is gonna matter. It will matter. It's the kind of thing where I'll take a chance on a $50 game. I won't take a chance on a $70 game. I just won't.
Absolutely.
I'll wait for a sale. I'll wait for a sale 9 times out of 10, unless it's. You've got other games that are the same, then I know that I'm going to like it. This is going to be interesting.
Like, I'll say this. I am curious about Forspoken, but I am $25 curious, not $93.50
you wait
curious.
about 6 months, you'll get it for that price, too.
Yeah, like get it with an Epic Games coupon for 50% off, plus they'll throw on some other percentage, or it'll be selling for cheap on Green Man or something. Yeah, sure, I'll pick it up then. I'll have a good laugh at Frey going like, "Whoa, my cuff is talking to me." Like, I'll have a good laugh. It'll be good. It'll be like The Room.
Hey, Cuff, what's up?
You're tearing me apart, Cuff. All right. I think that's a good discussion.
Yeah, we've got
today.
A lot of predictions to add up when it comes to over the next year or so. So
I'll note all the numbers down, and I think the way this is going to work is you get. I'll figure out the math on this, but effectively,
I want to see the numbers broken down, see how exactly right I was. You were 14% right on
So
this one.
the way I think this is going to work is if it, like, let's say you get 100 points if you say something's going to
Yeah.
come out and you said it comes out with 100%
Yeah.
probability. You get 60 points if it comes out and you said with a 60%
And then
chance.
you get 40 if it doesn't come out, and you said there was a 60.
You get
I like that. Yeah.
exactly. That's
Man,
exactly
I
the
can't
way
wait to
I'm
win
thinking
this.
of adding
I'm
this
gonna
up.
get so much acclaim from everyone.
If you're like a decision theory nerd, you're gonna realize that that's not incentive compatible, and that I should be paying you in quadratic points. I say screw that. I don't care about that math. I'm gonna like link an academic paper about quadratic scoring rules in
Very
in the
important.
link
I'm gonna
dump,
read all
and
of
then
it. So make
people
sure.
are gonna go read that
Yeah.
math,
Make sure.
and it'd be like, "You're a freaking nerd." Anybody who goes and reads this link is a freaking nerd. I mean, I'm
That's how we're
insulting
gonna
myself
know
here.
who like the real fans are who stuck to the end. They're gonna know about the quadratic paper. Like real weird thing at the end there.
Yeah, quadratic scoring rules. Wow, decision theory is so
Yeah.
fascinating. I don't know why I didn't think of this all along. But yeah, that's how I'm going to tally it up. You get 1 minus the answer if you were wrong. For 100 minus the answer if you were wrong. You get your answer if you were right. I think that's
I love it.
All right, if you'd like to keep up to date with the podcast, you can follow us on our website at avocadogamescast.wordpress.com. On that website, we post each episode along with a link dump that fact checks some of the stuff we say and fact checks some of the stuff we didn't say. It just does fact checks all around, fact checks for everyone, Oprah style. You can also subscribe to us on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, and or Spotify. Do all three. It makes us happy. It makes the numbers go up. All you got to do is search for Avocado Gamescast. There's no other podcast called Avocado Gamescast, because why would anyone else do that?
What are you doing out there?
And make sure you check out the community that spawned this podcast, The Avocado, at the-avocado.org. It's a wonderful community of people talking about pop culture, video games and movies and TV and musicals and all sorts of other fun stuff.
This is a great one.
All right. Yeah, I had a lot of fun with this. So we will see you folks next time. Thank you for listening. Stay safe. Don't buy Forspoken for $93.50.